All right, and start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, a soccer podcast covering all things happening in the EPL from a bench perspective. And again, I have been away for a bit. Missed all of last week. I only returned a little bit in the midweek, and it was just too much to recap everything. So because I missed last week, that meant I missed kind of the main feature of last week, and really the main feature so far in the season that was Arsenal and Man City. So I am going to do basically a mini recap of what happened. Try not to spend too much time, but I am going to focus on what happened with Arsenal and Man City, and that is how I'll begin the show. So the first action in the game, Rodri is targeted, and maybe we got a little hint of what was about to come. And then basically, I was worried how it was going to start because this feature last year, and I talked about that even before, was not really enjoyable. I guess for the neutral, it was tacticos, as they say, really did love it, but a lot of it last year was kind of cat and mouse, and both just trying to bait people to come run at you with the ball, and neither were really interested in doing that. The thing that Arteta was doing last year was kind of sitting off. He was, as they call him, marking high. They were man marking high. They were using Declan Rice in a bit of a different way, but they weren't really pressing Ederson. They weren't really pressing the center backs. They were just trying to bait them. Arsenal last season were playing very narrow, and they figured City were kind of weak a little bit on the wings, and it felt like Arteta thought that would work again, and we saw we saw something else happen. It felt like Man City took about 5 minutes to figure things out, but after that, they really did. And we have an early Gundogan chance, brilliant play by Bernardo Silva, kind of getting a little bit to the outside. Bernardo Silva seemed to just kind of understand a little bit how Man City were trying to mark a little bit. Kyle Walker, who has Martinelli, uh, and Savinho is doing a pretty good job to take Calafiori on, and so Bernardo Silva was noticing that Thomas Partey did not really know where to go out of possession here, and he was finding there's a little gap on the wing, and he was exploiting that. And he gets on the wing and then fires in a really good ball into Gundogan's run. Gundogan has a really nice touch, and frankly, it was surprised he didn't actually do more with that chance. But that was just a little a preview of what was about to come. And a couple minutes after that, we do get a goal, and what a play by Savinho. This is a player that they did not have last season. That it was well noted that Man City kind of had a little bit of a weakness on the right side last season, and Savinho gets the ball. Calafiori tries to press him, tries to mark him tight, and gets too tight. And Savinho does a very brilliant job to turn on him. And then after that, there's a run that Bernardo Silva makes, and that makes one of the defenders kind of think about reacting as well. I think actually it takes Thomas Partey away from running at Savinho, so that takes someone's attention. And then there's a little run that Gundogan makes as well, and that kind of gets I think it's Saliba's attention. And it's just enough. It's just kind of the threat of the run that makes Saliba run a little bit away from Holland than necessarily in a straight line. And the ball that Savinho plays is perfect, and it gets into Holland's path, and Holland has a pretty easy job to then have a finish, and he actually finishes it with the outside of his boot, a little bit of a cheeky kind of finish. We haven't seen that from him, but I mean, there you go. It's you've there's all this talk about Saliba and Gabriel usually getting being the two that have gotten the better out of Holland recently, and it took City about like 5 or 7 minutes to get that early goal. But again, it was and Savinho gets a lot of praise. Holland obviously he gets the praise because of the finish. But again, it was the runs of Bernardo Silva and Gundogan that were just kind of taking away potential defenders that really did help set that up. And then Man City get another chance. Well, I think there's some kind of a Savinho, maybe I'm trying to rethink what happens. Saliba gets or Savinho gets fouled, I think, and there's a free kick, and then Gundogan basically hits the post. Man City are able to keep the ball, and then I think basically they get a corner kick, and then at the corner kick, this is when things really did change. Rodri goes down. There's a little scrum with Thomas Partey. I don't really think there's really anything in it. But he has to go off, and now that we found out what's happened to him, Rodri is now done for the season. Possibly, you don't want to make calls now, but he's done his ACL and meniscus. It's a really bad injury. We don't know if he'll be able to get back to where he is. But I'll have more thoughts on Rodri after this. Especially, it's fitting as well because he's been kind of gone vocal lately. Speaking about how the workload is too much, the game load that's being demanded of these players is too high, and we only just saw him return. If you can remember as well, he didn't start the season. Uh, he was player of the Euros, and he had to go off in the final for a hamstring. He's been running on fumes. He's been very public about that since City won the Champions League, so a couple of seasons ago, and he had to play basically every single game. Not just last season, but just every single game that he's fit, he generally has to play because he is Man City's kind of setup. In at least in midfield, like everything runs through him, and the best way you can tell is look at the games he missed last season for a red card. He had a red card, I believe it was versus Nottingham Forest, and he had to miss 3 games. And what happened in those 3 games? Well, he missed Wolves, he missed Arsenal, and then he missed Aston Villa. And those are the 3 games that Man City lost. And then he returned, and Man City didn't lose again until basically I think it was the FA Cup final when they finally did lose a game that he started. And they started the season without him, and they've been able to win, but it has been different. And they were not doing well versus Brentford just a couple of weeks ago as well. And then Rodri came on, and that basically did change a little bit of how that second half went as well. And so this is it's not an exaggeration to say this is massive. It is basically them losing the Holland of their midfield. I think I can make that a comparison. But another thing that this does, going back to the Arsenal game, is it City now have to bring on Kovacic, and there's a little confusion of what happens or when to bring him on. So Arsenal are able to kind of buy a kind of a cheap free kick, and that's when City are able to sub on Kovacic. And there's some kind of communication between Kyle Walker and the ref and Kovacic coming on, and something basically happens, and Martinelli is able to just get a free run, and I think it's Thomas Partey or someone, maybe it's Trossard. Someone takes the free kick quickly. Man City are just kind of caught a little bit by surprise. Kyle Walker does get back into position, so that I don't really think you can really blame that for this goal being conceded. But frankly, everyone in Man City get back in position. Everyone's just kind of marking in the box, and there's a cutback ball for Calafiori. Again, when he gets the ball, you don't really think there's going to be a whole lot of danger here because maybe Calafiori can try a cross into the box, but you feel like Man City have that covered. And he instead, I don't know if he means to do this or to do this or not, but he just hits the absolute perfect, uh, just flighted curler, just flies into the net from distance. I mean, what a goal if he actually did mean that. And then after that, it did feel it took a while. It took like 35 minutes. Arsenal did slowly grow into the game a little bit, despite having like 20% of the ball. They do start to have some success attacking up the right side. And they get an early corner, or they get a corner kick with Saka basically getting behind Gvardiol. Gvardiol doesn't do the best job of finding or tracking Saka's run, allows him to get behind. I think there's a little pass, through pass found by Declan Rice. So corner kick, and Gabriel basically nearly scores on that corner kick, losing Jeremy Doku, marking him, and it's just a free header, and you imagine he would have normally done better with that. So Man City had the warning, and then a few minutes later, they basically get another corner kick, and this time Declan Rice gets the ball, and he does a very nice job to have this little kind of first time just kind of volley hit that Saka's able to run onto, and again, basically Gvardiol just kind of loses him, and I think what happens? Saka's able to get to the byline, and I think he's trying to cross the ball in, and then it's kind of blocked out. So another corner kick, and this is really where the only danger, the only threat that Arsenal were posing was coming from. And here, Man City have switched up. There's no more Jamie Doku marking Kyle Walker, and instead, or no, no, it's no more Jamie Doku marking Gabriel. It's now Kyle Walker. and he does an even worse job of losing him. And basically, what Arsenal do is they use Martinelli to screen Ederson, and so Ederson can't really move to stop the ball going over his head. So it goes back to the back post. It's the same exact corner kick that Arsenal have just nearly scored on, and here Gabriel gets another free header and he outjumps Diaz and just buries it. Uh, and then seconds away from halftime, Arsenal maybe get a little bit greedy here. Calafiori makes a little run upfield. Trossard sees it and tries to pick him out, but it's intercepted. Thomas Partey then has to go to ground to stop a counter attack. So a really cheap free kick to give away. City get a chance to whip something in the box. They do. That's headed away. And then Trossard tries to compete for a 50-50 ball. Flies into Bernardo Silva's back. The ref calls that a foul. And then Trossard kicks the ball away and picks up his second yellow card. And so for all that talk about saying this fixture has not been eventful, it was very eventful in just that opening 45 minutes and plus because of the Rodri injury, it went to like 55. So it, what eventful, I guess you can say, opening half and basically the second half because of that red card. The script was basically written and it was followed. Arsenal were going to sit very very deep and defend. They were kind of doing that a little bit after they leveled the game. Anyways, it seemed like the idea really was just bunker down. We saw that a little bit in the week before versus Spurs as well. Arsenal very comfortable defending deep, and they don't have a game breaker like Martin Odegaard. So you understand maybe a little more workman like approach made sense. And basically, it seemed the objective for them was just find a way to just make it impossible for Holland to get the ball, and they did a very good job of doing that. There was one time where I think Holland was able, I think it was off maybe a corner kick, or there was a ball whipped in, maybe off a recycled corner kick, where Holland was able to get the better of Saliba, jumping down, and it was saved. It was one of the really nice saves by David Raya. Raya apparently had to make like nine or 10 quality saves, or at least eight quality saves. I think 9 or 10 overall. Man City apparently had 28 shots with 11 on target in that second half. And what's weird is it didn't feel like a lot of those were quality looks, but the Holland one was a quality one. Then there were two that came to Jasko Gvardiol, which I was kind of a little bit criticizing or critiquing why he was still being played because it wasn't really like he was on the outside. He was in the inside. He was almost acting like a midfielder, or he's trying to get the ball in the box, and City weren't really able to find him the ball. And but the few times that there was kind of a second ball that came in there, he had a hit, and the hits were pretty good. They forced Raya into making some pretty big saves, but it became a task of Man City try to break through this really impressive and difficult to play through Arsenal block, and this is where you know you see what happens with the Man City without Rodri and without Kevin De Bruyne because it's not the same team, and Pep might have to really adjust, kind of losing these players going forward. Another thing that was happening was so Pep set up with almost a back three. The way he was playing Kyle Walker, it was not to make him as kind of a right fullback. He really was the third center back. And in the second half, what happens was, City already have the man advantage, but the three people on the ball that were kept getting it reshuffled were uh, Ruben Diaz, and then alongside him is Kyle Walker, and then alongside him is Akanji. And it never really felt like Man City actually had a man advantage because you have the three here that are just it's easy for them to get the ball. So if they have the lead, then Arsenal would have been absolutely done so. But Arsenal were just trying to defend what they had. And Arsenal didn't really care about pressing those three center backs because they worried more about what was ahead of them. And it just felt Pep took too long to kind of tweak this out and to change it. The other thing to say is you're using Kyle Walker as a center back, and who is the player that was tasked with marking Gabriel? Now, you could have just said maybe have a Kanji on, maybe have do Ruben Diaz, maybe change this up and not have Kyle Walker or Jeremy Doku in the beginning, but just Kyle Walker being played hurt them on the Gabriel corner kick goal, and then hurt them in the second half because you never really saw him uh, making any kind of runs. You never really saw him doing a through ball. There are a couple of times he did try to do a hit, from distance, and I, that whole second half was really just Man City being frustrated, and they sometimes get the ball in some decent areas, and then, you get the ball out wide, and then you do a cutback cross, kind of near the box, and this is where Rodri can hit these, and we've seen that. We have actually it's kind of become Rodri's kind of like signature kind of goal, essentially. And instead of Rodri, it was coming to Kovacic. Kovacic has been able to hit them in the past, but he wasn't having his shooting boots that day, or it was coming to Ruben Diaz. Ruben Diaz was trying his shot from range. Uh, and Kyle Walker as well. And just it wasn't if you're an Arsenal fan, this is exactly who you want to be on the ball, not a Kevin De Bruyne or a Phil Foden or a Rodri. And so that was really it felt frankly Arsenal were comfortable, despite Raya having to make a few saves here and there. And you're watching this again. It felt now is the time really for Phil Foden to come on because he is someone that can get the ball in the turn, get a shot off quickly. The thing that was funny is I said before, and not just Foden, maybe bring someone else on for Jeremy Doku. And the thing that's funny is I said before, when the game was supposed to be kind of an open contest and more of kind of a kind of 11 on 11 kind of contest, I did feel like Jamie Doku probably offered you a little bit more than Jack Grealish. But when Arsenal became so committed to defending in a block, they didn't really care when Jamie Doku got the ball out wide because Doku doesn't really like crossing the ball in. Joki was getting the ball, and his thought was to just kind of carry it into the box. And there was one time when he maybe got through a couple players, almost bought a PK. But other than that, Jimmy Doku was really struggling. And Timber, when he was asked to kind of take him on 1-for-1, was doing a decent job. I was surprised Timber was playing and not Ben White, but Timber did really an admirable job. And then Ben White came on in the second half as well. Uh, and it just felt like they needed something different. And Jack Grealish came on. The first thing he did was actually he got his fullback to commit, got him going 1v1. And Jack Grealish, to be fair to him, actually did a pretty good job of being able to get to the byline and to try crossing it from a different angle than necessarily, cutting towards goal and trying something else. So that helped. And then you bring in Phil Foden, someone that could finally kind of turn on the ball. And nothing really came from that, but I just feel like had Pep maybe started the second half doing that, then I think he brought him on like the 60th minute. Maybe this actually would have changed because Foden did get a couple looks. One was just hit right at Raya, and another one was I think Kovacic tried a shot. It was deflected, and Foden nearly got on the end of the deflection. He was at least anticipating. Man City were just there was a whole lot of side to side stuff. Just no one really had any inkling or ability to really kind of thread the needle. And the reason why I'm a little bit surprised on how toothless their attack was is it wasn't that long ago. It was Brentford, where Brentford kind of were setting up in the same way. Now again, uh, you can kind of do comparisons and like for like with the personnel that Brentford have, uh, but they also City had Kevin De Bruyne and they also had Rodri, and it just the way that things clicked just a few weeks ago for, for Brentford, I was really worried. I was like, well, Pep has kind of the secret to kind of play through these deep blocks that have sometimes, given him fits as well. Now you don't have two of those players. It was different, and basically, but they do find a way to equalize at the very end. Again, Grealish was able to get to the byline get a corner kick, and then the corner kick's taken short. And Grealish again is able to get to the byline. He has a cutback cross that finds Kovacic. Kovacic has a shot that's deflected, so a little luck here, and it falls into the path of John Stones. I feel like if John Stones was healthy, he probably should have started instead of Kyle Walker. Big body into the box as well. Can do well winning the ball, winning some headers or winning some duels, and he's just there to get a foot on it, and it's able to deflect uh, past David Rea. But even before this, there was a little moment here where Raya had the ball and it felt like Arsenal had won the game. The way that their players were all celebrating, and they go long, and you understand him going long, and it's one of those things. It's just kind of a more kind of misfortune than not. It looks like Gabriel Jesus has since come on, and he's trying to win the ball back. It bounces, and then it's able to bounce right to Ederson, and City are able to get one more attack going forward. So it ends 2-2. We get a much better game than we've gotten. Rodri is kind of the consequence. That is the storyline. That Arsenal get a point at the Etihad, and they do it without Odegaard. They had to overcome some adversity as well. People were going at how they set up. Uh, I think given what they were missing as well, given that they were playing down a man in the second half, I don't really know what you would expect Arsenal to do otherwise. So I can't necessarily go with that. Sometimes I have been able to go at Arteta being quote unquote pragmatic. When you're down a man and you have the lead, and the fact that you're seeing that City are kind of struggling to play through you, they not doing that, I think would be worth criticizing. And the fact that they are able to get a very important point at the Etihad, that's not a bad result at all. Again, being, I think a lot of people just kind of made it forget about their thoughts that they were down a man. They lost Trossard. Now maybe even with 11, they would have tried to play in the same kind of manner because they kind of were a little bit after they equalized. They were sitting well back. But it's a tactic, and if you can't break it down like Man City couldn't, it's a good tactic. But back on to Rodri. Uh, it's something that City have ignored for a long time. Anytime I've done any kind of preview, going into the season, or when I've done like kind of a mid preview, I always do like a weakness. Where is a team that, where is something that could maybe affect this team that could happen? And I've always been my number one thing has been focusing on Rodri. Rodri is Man City just personified. He is Pep on the field, and it's something that they have ignored. They haven't really had a backup plan, and the quote unquote backup plan was Calvin Phillips. He never was able to fit, and not only that, they've since given him to Ipswich now. Now maybe they can call him back. I don't know, but they haven't had an idea for him in a very long time. And if not only are they going to miss him for the season now, it's possible, and he was getting up there in age, but it's possible they might not get the same Rodri that has been there for the last 4 or 5 seasons. Frankly, I mean, everyone has their opinions on who should be the Ballon d'Or. Vinny was absolutely unreal and special for his Champions League campaign. I'm of the opinion for the last 2 years or plus, the best footballer in world football has been Rodri or Rodrigo, and it is unfortunate that this has now come. But another reason why is his durability has been unbelievable, considering his not just his durability, but he hasn't been able to drop any kind of levels. And to do that sustainability, to do that with sustained success and basically consistency, that is absolutely remarkable. And I just feel like that's maybe been overlooked, compared to kind of the more flashy kind of, highlights that Vinny was able to put on. I don't wanna go at Vinny. Vinny is deserving as well, but I just don't feel like Rodri has been appreciated the way that I feel like he should have been, especially he's playing in a position that is considered to be like the hardest really to replicate or find in the game. There's so many teams have to play 2 in this position because of the demands that when you're number 6, you have a role in buildup. You have a role when people recycling possession. You have to be so good with your feet. He's been 3 or 4 years now. He gets the ball out of his feet faster than anyone else in the game. He gets the ball in one touch. He knows where to go. He's so press resistant. He's a brilliant defensively. Maybe sometimes he can get run at, but he's very adept whenever someone is trying to run past him. He normally takes a tactical foul. He normally eats a red card or a yellow card. He really doesn't get it sent off, except for what happened versus Nottingham Forest. And you just see it in the way that City have performed. City just do not lose when he plays the FA Cup, notwithstanding. And he was considered the player of the Euros. I feel like you could have given it to Danny Olmo instead, but Rodri definitely deserving as well. And so it is going back to this. It is a problem that City have ignored. They haven't realized this. This is a player that we have been just running to the bone, essentially running to the ground, for 2 seasons plus, and he's spoken about that. He's gone on and saying he's tired, and and I think it was something that even the CBS like Paramount crew spoke about at length the last time they had a Champions League. They even showed a graph at the players that have played the most in Europe. And unfortunately for Man City, there were two players on Man City that were on that list. It was Phil Foden was the other one. It was like Jude Bellingham was another. Then I think it was Bruno Fernandes from Manchester United. Maybe there was maybe someone else. Uh, but and that's just the thing. There's a tiredness. To playing that many minutes week in week out. Players are not robots, and I feel like in general, Rodri has started to kind of speak out about that. And I think now that we've seen what's happened to him, maybe it's time for more players to speak out because it is sad. He's not only just a brilliant player, like again, best player in the world, at least in my estimation. But it's just everyone is kind of you're watching from a kind of an entertainment or kind of a neutral kind of perspective. The sport, or at least watching Man City, it's going to be worse for everyone. So it's just it's a loss. It's a massive loss for anyone that's been following the sport, and it's sad because it's predictable. It's predictable that this was happening. You see him speaking about it over and over again. You can tell he's tired, and basically, it seems like his soft tissue muscles just finally gave out. And it's something that Klopp has spoken about. Player welfare has taken a back seat in all of this, everywhere you look. And more games have been added to these guys' schedules over the last years. You all of a sudden have Nations League, and you have Nations League qualifying, and then when you get into Nations League playoffs, and then you have Club World Cup that has been expanded. You have Champions League that has more games than they've ever had before. There really does need to be a giant wake up call before something else happens, and before it's too late. Now, one thing I can say is it is one of the few positive things that they have done is kind of accept post COVID or whenever they made the change to officially expand it to 5 subs. Universal, year round for all competitions. So that definitely does allow you uh, to rotate players' minutes a little bit more than what was allowed before. But there needs to be, if nothing else, managers kind of need to step in, or clubs need to step in, and actually start to develop a little bit more kind of a player science kind of project where they manage people's minutes. Essentially, I feel like some clubs do this, but some clubs maybe don't. Even if someone is fit, week in and week out, all it takes is just so many sprints that a player is able to do. Eventually, something is going to show up. He had the hamstring. It's possible as well. He came back where the hamstring wasn't fully repaired, and Pep maybe brought him on too soon when he brought him on versus Brentford in that second half. And he had to bring him on because they were Man City, even though they had a 2-1 lead, were being outplayed versus Brentford in that half. And so again, just picking back to what this means for Man City going forward, it's a problem. And the one player that immediately comes to mind is someone that Liverpool have been targeting. It is the player that came on for them last in Euros for Spain when Spain had to lose Rodri for a hamstring, and it is Martin Zubimendi. And I will be interested to follow if what happens with him. Now, he rejected Liverpool because of his love for the area, for the Basque region. People were making fun of his love for mountains, but apparently, he enjoys hikes in the area. He's also supported, supposedly, maybe come to regret not moving on, not doing that decision. Apparently, Sociedad have not had a good start to their season as well. I mean, uh, they lost Le Normand. They've lost Mikel Merino to Arsenal. Sociedad have not been the same kind of team that they were last season. He might be in more kind of in the mood for a move this January, and so whether it's Liverpool that try again, or maybe Man City actually go in and kind of pick out the guy that it just seemed to he's kind of just being assumed to be Rodri's kind of Rodri's kind of next gen, essentially. It looks like when Rodri's not playing, he is the Rodri replacement for Spain. So it just kind of makes sense for to go that way. That'll be something I'll be following in this coming January. But again, it is a blow to Man City, and a blow as far as what their ambitions can be for this year. We'll have to see how they're able to cope. We saw versus Newcastle this past weekend. not too well. And I'll get to that later on. But to speak on Arsenal as well, again, I do think they were outplayed before the Trussell card. It is the Etihad. Usually, City just do outplay teams. But the thing that I was noticing is Man City were targeting Thomas Partey with Bernardo Silva and Gundogan's movement. And again, Havertz does a lot of things to offer you, but couldn't impose himself. And basically, it felt like Saka and Martinelli were asked to just kind of be defensive wingbacks, against City's attacking threats. Even before the yellow card that happened, and Havertz apparently had like a historically bad game. He wasn't able to find any kind of pass, and when he was trying to get on the ball, he wasn't able to keep hold of it. Uh, Arsenal's midfield wasn't just existent again, but just again, this team without Odegaard can be a bit toothless. Now we have seen a little of a winkle come in since then. Leicester City is not Man City, but we did see a little of a change. Come in with Timber coming in instead of Ben White. I do think gives him a little bit more playmaking ability, and then to fit in Calafiori in, he was blockbuster, and not just for the goal that he had, just the like and maybe a little mistake on the Savia mishap. There is a player there that can do really anything you want. He can make runs, disguise runs like we saw versus Leicester. He was amazing versus Leicester. He can be a person to be in the box to fit in. I think it's not sticking with Calafiori. It's not a coincidence that I think it's possibly the best Martinelli has looked in almost 2 seasons that he did versus Leicester. It's because he finally had someone that was doing the work that Chevy, uh, Granit Xhaka was doing for him, before, Xhaka left for Leverkusen. Finally, you had someone that, Martinelli was able to kind of, create off with those runs. So, Calafiori makes Arsenal significantly different. You still have Mikel Merino, to fit in this, a technical player, kind of, speaking of Granit Xhaka, similar kind of mold there. So Arsenal's midfield is you imagine, going to be a little bit improved. Uh, I don't really know. It's funny because just a year ago, I would have imagined, Arsenal have to have Thomas Partey because he's the only one that can kind of, thread balls in lines and no one else can. Declan Rice can't really do that. Now you have players around that can do that with Odegaard, and imagine you're going to get Odegaard back, sometime in mid October, as long as he doesn't have any kind of setbacks. So all of a sudden, Arsenal have to really like where they are, and Man City dropped points on the weekend, and it looked like Arsenal were going to as well, despite having 35 plus shots, whatever it was. Get 16 corner kicks, and lo and behold, just like what happened versus Man City, and just like with Spurs, they again score with a corner kick. Wasn't Gabriel this time? Gabriel was almost like the decoy. Funny enough, I'll get to that game later on, but again, Arsenal have to a little bit like where they are, but one thing to say about them is they don't really have it yet, but a player that has kind of done they've kind of ridden like Man City have done with Rodri is Shaka, Saka, and so do they possibly have that problem? Declan Rice played a whole lot of minutes this summer for England in Euros. Is Arteta going to be able to manage those minutes more? I think there's a lot of things you can praise Arteta for. The way that he's been able to just kind of galvanize this group and to get them all of a sudden to get them with Man City, year in and year out. No one thought this was going to be possible. The year that he did it, the aim really was just get back in the Champions League for Arsenal fans. Arsenal fans have been kind of annoyed that all of a sudden they aren't winning titles again. By missing out by a point or two to Man City. Just no one thought Arsenal was going to be able to catch Man City as quickly as they have. It hasn't really, obviously when you get that close to the cookie jar, you want a cookie, and that's what the fans want. Uh, but one thing I think you can criticize Arteta a little bit for is he hasn't done a good job of managing minutes. Whether or not uh, it's on him or whether or not Saka just wants to play every single weekend. When Saka is tired, he looks a different player, and Man City haven't or Arsenal haven't really had a kind of solution to that, and they've given away Reece Nelson, but they have brought in Raheem Sterling. So I think we need to see Arteta do a better job of managing Saka's minutes, just to to protect him. But also, you're going to get more out of Saka if he's got a little bit more energy towards the latter half of the season, because Saka has done a really good job of staying healthy and being fit, but he hasn't been the same player. Every post March, every single March is kind of the same. It's a different kind of player. Whether or not he's been fit or not, it seems like his shot power is off. He just seems just be off it. He's fouled as much as any kind of player, so that's kind of the thing to worry about with him. And then just kind of picking back on everything else, Liverpool are able to get back to their winning ways. Luis Diaz with the headliner with 2 goals coming after a great performance with Gakpo and AC Milan. So a little fun there where the left wing spot has a little competition. The first goal with a great diagonal ball by Kanate, actually responsible for help 3 goals with his distribution, an area that he already looks vastly improved on, and he got helped with a goal versus Wolves this past weekend as well, and it was unbelievable versus AC Milan, likewise. And then Trent basically, Liverpool win the ball. Trent gets basically a return ball, or Liverpool gets a return ball from Salah. I think there's a long pass by Kanate again. Salah is able to one touch it to Trent, and then Trent is able to just carry it into the box where Bournemouth's kind of midfield looks a little bit non-existent and played behind. And then he's picks out Diaz, and Diaz is able to slide it in. And then Darwin Núñez gets his first start and scores a worldie himself. And again, it's a long ball by Kanate, finds Salah, touches it to Darwin, then Darwin has just a free run to the ball. He gets to the box, and he has a couple options, and he decides probably the one option he shouldn't have done. Uh, when he cuts inside, he goes it with his weak foot, and he just curls it past Kepa. No shot at saving this. This is a freak like video game goal. The kind of curve and power he's able to get on it. And there you go, 3-0, and that's kind of where the damage was done. It wasn't the cleanest game though. Bournemouth scored 4 minutes into the game. It was ruled up by just a very tight offsides. It's more kind of a misfortune than not. Liverpool, I think, had 19 shots versus Bournemouth's 19, 7 on target as well for Liverpool. 7 on target for Bournemouth, and Liverpool had 13. So Bournemouth were kind of boat raced a little bit, but they did a good job of fighting back as well. No Allison was available, that could have been an issue, but Kelleher was asked to come in and made a number of really clutch saves. To be fair to him, Liverpool still do not have a DM, so sometimes that can be maybe exploited. But at the same time, through 5-6 games in, they have the lowest XG of any team, or so far of any other team to start the season. So there you go. The defense has been quite good. The goalkeepers haven't been facing a whole lot of shots to stop them. I mean, the one goal that they conceded was a worldie versus Nottingham Forest with Callum with Adoy. And they conceded versus Wolves by Kanate and Allison, just kind of a bit of a switching off, just a little bit of a mistake. And so the only things to add on here is yeah, again with the Rodri news, does Liverpool try to react a little bit quicker on Martin Zubimendi, or not? Do they feel like they have enough here? One thing I would possibly like to see if they were able to get Zubimendi in is you could play Alexis further upfield as the 10, because I feel like Szoboszlai offers you a whole lot of stuff. Sometimes his decision making isn't the best. He's a technical player. I kind of feel like Szoboszlai can play anywhere in midfield. But when he's kind of asked to be, kind of playmaker, he's not providing you the enough final production actions that you would have necessarily liked. Sometimes maybe he's kind of hesitant. I don't know. But that I've seen Alexis played as a 10. I saw it versus West Ham in the midweek. Just he's different gravy. They're asking him to play a little bit deeper out in this kind of pivot role to help with like kind of build up action. Sometimes he's able to get a little bit higher up, but I want him to kind of be a little bit with kind of the general with the ball in the final third more times than not. I feel like that's a secret to unlocking some of these deep blocks that we have seen. Harvey Elliott, when he returns, maybe could help out, or even maybe Chiesa if he can stay fit. So the table is starting to take shape here. We have City, Arsenal, City, Arsenal, and Liverpool. And then Arsenal were in fourth, going into that week. And then we have Aston Villa. Aston Villa were in third, and it took them some second half heroics to beat Wolves, a very stubborn Wolves side. Wolves are like 19th in the table, and they frankly shouldn't be. They a lot of misfortune as well. And they started the season losing Pedro Neto, one of their more important attackers. I think Wolves will be fine. To be honest, I've been talking about Gary O'Neill's job being on the line. Also, in this game versus Villa, they lost Mascara to a pretty bad injury, and all of a sudden, Mascara was starting to come into his own shoes as well. So uh, the squad depth is not really there. So maybe you worry a little bit there, but all of a sudden, the midfield depth is quite impressive and quite good. I mean, it's not easy to get Unai Emery side to look almost pedestrian, and that's really what happened. Lamena. Andre has come in and already hit the ground running for them. He's been a really good pickup for them. Uh, and you have, Lamena, you have Yao Gomez, so that 3 is just really, really good. There's a lot of, uh there's a lot of compliments, there. I mean, Lamena can be kind of a playmaker, when he needs to be. Andre is a very good, duel winner. Yao Gomez is a very good duel winner as well. Andre is very good with ball his feet, very press resistant, as we saw versus Liverpool. And, that midfield, gave Liverpool fits. To be fair to them, that's a very good and talented midfield. That's not a 19th or relegation placed side. Now they have had some issues kind of going forward. Cunha has goals in him. I think Larson has goals when he can find them. And finally, versus Liverpool, this Forbes guy came on and actually offered them some pace that we hadn't seen, something more than Bellegarde was offering. So I feel like Forbes can maybe get more starts for them. And so all of a sudden, I do think Wolves could be okay. But here, they're beating Aston Villa, and then on comes Watkins in like the 70th minute, and then Konza in the 88th minute, and the goal for Konza comes from a beautiful cross by Tielemans, but really it comes after Mosquera has been out, and so on comes Breno, and basically just kind of a cross into the box finds Konza just unmarked, and so you feel like maybe the injury to Mosquera did hurt there, and then Breno came on and kind of he was just trying to clear the ball a little bit and basically cleared it right to put it into a danger moment, and Villa was able to uh, run onto that, and I think there's a very nice clever run by Morgan Rogers, and again it's a nice little through ball, but that Tillman finds, and then it's just a little square ball that John Duran is able to get scoring again. So the only thing I have is I don't know how sustainable Villa can keep up with this pace because they're having to, Unai Emery is having to make a lot of changes in the second half, and we maybe saw it, show up this past weekend as they did drop points to Ipswich. But I think the other thing too is he's got to. Unai Emery has got an interesting job because of the Champions League. Kind of factoring in. We haven't seen John Duran get a start yet. Maybe we actually do see that versus Bayern Munich that they're about to play, and I think that maybe factored in a little bit why we saw what happened with Ipswich. But the other thing too is they had to miss. John Duran came off for injury here. Uh, Not John Duran. It was John McGinn. Came off for injury here, and we maybe saw a little where his miss factors in. I've been one of those players. I haven't really loved his game, but maybe you see what he offers out of possession, where maybe it exposes Villa a little bit. Because it seemed like Ipswich were able to attack them a little bit more down that side than we usually are used to seeing Aston Villa. The other thing too is they're not having Meta Cash right now, and you're forcing Ezra Konsa to be, instead of a center back, to be a little bit more as a fullback. And Konsa had a little bit mistake that led to the second goal for them. So that's where we have with them, and then we have Chelsea and West Ham 3-0 over before the 40th minutes. West Ham went into this game with a very bad setup, and basically Nicholas Jackson was able to just run past the high line. A couple of these goals with these, and then Cole Palmer got another one as well. So that's all to say about that. West Ham tried to basically a back three with like Edson Alvarez, who's not really a center back, and he could stand with Jackson or Max Kilman or Mavropanos, and we actually did see a bit of a massive change this past week versus Brentford, where Tadibo came in, so it was Tadibo and Max Kilman together. Uh, it felt like West Ham were a little bit more stable defensively, despite the one first minute goal conceding to Embremo. Uh, but the other thing was no Alvarez because of what happened in the midweek, and so he had a red card versus Liverpool, so forced to kind of play a little bit differently. I still think West Ham have some fits that Lopetegui has to figure out. But the other thing too is, they spent some money this past summer, and the way that they've started the season, not able to get Kudos going so far, not able to get Bowen going. We actually saw a bit of a lineup change here. So Bowen through the middle, Kudos tried on the right, and then Somerville tried. Somerville is another player that they brought in, spent some money on. He hasn't really been able to get going for them either. So a little nerviness for West Ham fans and for Chelsea. Chelsea's starting to get into gear a little bit. Jackson's starting to fire a little bit for them. We just saw what Cole Palmer did this past weekend. When I get back to their game, in the midweek when they played in the EFL game, in Cuckoo was able to get going for them. Sancho has started to be a regular starter for them on the left side, and he's starting to work a little bit for them. So uh, all of a sudden, a little bit more kind of optimism for Chelsea. They've spent enough money for that. But one thing I have noticed is it seems like Maresca isn't dogged in his ways. When a team's going to play a high line, he's fine with them going direct. He's fine with them looking for Jackson. It doesn't seem like they're just 50,000 passes to put you to sleep before final action. It seems like he's allowing his team a little bit more freedom. Especially, he's giving Cole Palmer a lot more freedom. That's at least good news for Chelsea fans, and I guess for a neutral if you're watching Chelsea, because the way that they looked versus Brighton, they finished that game with less than 300 passes. That is not what I was expecting when I first saw Enzo Maresco was hired, and then I kind of read about him. I was really kind of dreading that kind of news, because it's one of the things that Pochettino had. He got Chelsea kind of firing and as more and the more kind of enjoyable sides before he left last season. Enzo's finally come in, and the last 2 seasons or the last 2 games, he's kind of adopted the Pochettino kind of role to give Cole Palmer a little bit more of a free will to just kind of run wherever he wants to try to find the ball, and then the final pass into whether it's Jackson or whether it's Madueke, coming in when get Jaden Sancho the ball and let him do some stuff 1v1. It's been quite enjoyable for Chelsea fans, and they're starting to add some goals. Not only to match that enjoyableness, and then we have other results. We have Spurs and Brentford. See how we're doing for time. Could be worse. Uh, Tottenham were able to bounce back after the poor kind of showing versus Arsenal, but they had to also respond because they opening 30 seconds into the game, and Bremu scores for them. Nice little cross in by Lewis Potter here. And then basically Brentford become a little bit more of their own kind of downfall with a goal from Solanke, just a gift by Pinnock, and then Madison has a shot that's saved, but falls into Solanke's path. And then Brennan Johnson tacks on another who has had a bit of a wild and eventful few days, we can say, since the Arsenal game. Kind of went at him a little bit, and I wasn't the only one. Apparently, he got some stick on social media, deleted the social media, and he has since responded with kind of 4 goals in 3 games, or 4 goals in 4 games, with what happened versus Man United. And the other thing, too, is it's come. One of those games was in the Europa game versus Karabag, and he he scored when Tottenham were down a man. Just he has been absolutely flying for them. They've started to actually find him in better spots where he's not being asked to kind of beat someone 1v1. He's able to exploit some space. So I think that's kind of helped out as well. But Spurs have done a good job of kind of responding. One other thing that was happening here is Brentford were having fits left and right. A couple of these were related to kind of who they had available to play. No Christian Norgard again. No Jensen. So they were trying to kind of be a little too cute, passing from the back, and they were able to do this for Man City. For Spurs, were able to turn them over, and basically this Brentford Brennan Johnson goal comes from it's just a loose pass that I think by Yanalt that Madison reads and intercepts. Son's able to get the ball in the middle of the field, and he's able to pass it out wide to Johnson, and Johnson does a really good job to pick out the corner. Madison for Spurs was unbelievable, and he's able to get on the end for the third. But just the way that I don't necessarily know if it was a change, but the way that he was playing a little bit deeper of a role. You're allowing Kulishevsky to play a little bit more kind of as your 10. Versus Arsenal, I thought sometimes they were kind of it was too kind of redundant. It felt like they were playing in the same spaces. Here, Madison was combining brilliantly with Kulishevsky. He was getting the ball, and he was just making really clever decisions with it. Now again, it's a different Brentford were trying to set up a little bit differently than Arsenal were, and basically every team that has played Spurs since that Arsenal performance have been setting up differently. So a little bit more space, a little more time to react. Maybe when you press Spurs, it actually helps them out a little bit than necessarily having to play through deep lines. Uh, but they looked very good. Spurs finally looked like a team that has been, I praised a little bit, or had some hype, going into the season. Arsenal kind of killed it a little bit, and they do have some injuries as well. In the Carabao game, they actually lost Son, so we saw Timo Werner versus Man United. And Werner has a lot of qualities. Being able to be on the end of a finish isn't one of them, as we saw. So there's still some interesting. There's still some kind of critiquing or kind of workshopping that Tottenham has to do. But really good way for them to bounce back. But in this game, it ends 3-1. Vicario had an interesting day. A couple nervy moments and a couple really brilliant stops. So there was one where Fabio nearly got the better of him with some kind of surprised him with some pace. Brentford nearly tied the game, and Bremer's effort was denied by Vicario. And then the second came from just kind of a routine catch. There's a looping cross. It feels like he drops it, and then he touches it again outside the box. The ref allows it. And then there was one where and Bremer was kind of played in behind. It was 2v1 at this point. 1v1 from Vicario from the tight angle. He makes that catch. And then there was a cross into the box by Lewis Potter, where Kevin Schade does well to kind of get up and to get ahead on this. He heads it down, but one of the usually it's kind of a harder shot for keepers to save. Vicario handles it well. He handles the bounce well. So Brentford were quite good in the second half. The stats don't really reflect that, but they created a little bit more danger than they did, and they stopped turning it over, which helped them. But here, uh, they have another injury. They lost Wiza in the before that. But here, versus Man City. But here again, no Norgard, no Jensen. Janelt did not have his best game. Playing, trying to pass from the back. A couple starts here for Fabio and Yamaluk, and it wasn't really their day. Shada came in the second half, and I thought that gave Brentford a little more presence in the box. And unfortunately for Brentford, Shada started versus West Ham, and he actually got injured in the second half as well. Just Brentford can't really get a break here. Another unfortunate thing is Pinnock makes a mistake for the first goal, but it comes right after a huge block in his part. But Spurs were just creating so many chances by Ford and Brentford in the sloppy mistakes. Frank is trying to maybe switch up his game plan, trying to get Brentford to learn how to play make a little bit more or kind of build up from the back. It's not really something we've already seen from them, but that's going to take some growing pains. They were brilliant versus Man City just a week ago. Here, not so much. So unfortunate news there. Other results, we have Newcastle dropping points to Fulham 3-1. Uh, there was a moment when it could have been 2-2 where Fabian Schär was kind of through on goal, missed it. Here, Emo Swithrow is involved again, as is Jimenez, and then the other Arsenal player that they brought in Reece Nelson, gets on the third. Another thing to say is Fulham have done a pretty good job of their recruiting. Another player that they brought in kind of last minute was Anderson from Crystal Palace, and he's come in, looked right at home. Newcastle were dominated. I think Fulham had 20 plus shots. Pope had to make 8 or 9 saves. The Adama and Jimenez connection is working working very very well. Uh, the first goal comes from Adama getting the ball. He sends the ball into the box, and Jimenez has an unbelievable touch, and then he fires something in that the Pope has no chance on. Good to see Jimenez back, and Jimenez is actually starting to score regularly. He got a goal. It was a PK, but he got a goal again this past weekend. He's kind of overtaken Rodrigo Munez, which we saw, kind of flying a little bit for him last season. So it's Adama and Kenny Tete have been combining well, and then on the other side, Robinson and Irobi or Smith Rowe have been a pretty good job working together. So there's a lot of cohesion all of a sudden with this Fulham team. It still feels like they could tweak things a little bit. Sanderberg keeps coming in the second half every time now. They still don't really have a Yao Polina kind of fix. It's Sasha Lukic and Pereira to start every single game, and then usually Marcos Silva doesn't really like that. He changes it in the second half. But other than that, I'm not talking about Fulham or looking at them at all as a team that's going to be in trouble. And the fact that that is the case, real credit to Marco Silva. I was not expecting to have that kind of take, and he's really gone under the radar for how good he's done. Fulham have like the third lowest expected goals for conceded to 6 games into the season, and they've lost a couple of players. They lost Polina. They lost Tim Ream wasn't always starting, but they lost him. They lost Tosin. Tosin was starting for them, and they've replaced Tosin with Anderson, and they've moved. Anderson is slotted in. He's doing fine, and you have Anderson and Calvin Bassey, and that's been a very Leno isn't having to make a ton of saves, to get some of their clean sheets. So Fulham have been very impressive to start the season, and Newcastle. Uh, Again, it could have been 2-2 if the Fabian Schär chance goes in. The other thing too is uh, basically, they give away a little bit for the third goal. There's Bruno's trying to do a little too much and just kind of plays it into to Reece Nelson. But Newcastle have been outplayed. One thing you can say, Harvey Barnes can just to produce for them, so that's positive. They're trying to fit in Gordon a little bit on the left, and we saw versus Newcastle. I mean, we saw versus Man City. Gordon has played centrally, but they're trying to find a way to fit Harvey Barnes in a little bit more, and he's been rewarding with a couple of the goals that he's been adding. But it's not the same team. It feels like Al has a bit of a issue on his hand because he can't get Newcastle to play the way he wants because of what's behind him, with Dan Burn every single game week. Now, uh, and I do feel like not getting Palace Gahey a Palace across the line, or Fulham just brought in Anderson. That maybe could have been a fix. Palace just brought in Maxence Lacroix. That could have been someone to maybe target. There were kind of players out there that Newcastle targeted Mark Gahey, and he was apparently priced out of their price range. It's been a mistake not to a little bit improve there because as we saw versus Man City, Dan Burn gets sent to wherever it is he came from. He gets sent to London, I guess we could say. When they're in Newcastle, on the midweek versus Gvardiol, and just one cut, one kind of turn to switch of the foot was able to send him the wrong way, and Gvardiol was able to get a cheap goal. So. Dan Burn, I guess Fabian shared otherwise did a pretty good job of being tight and being aggressive on Holland. Holland wasn't really able to get free that much. And Newcastle were actually playing a bit of a higher line than they normally do. That's one thing you can praise them a little bit for, but you know, over the course of the season, you feel like this is going to be a problem for them, and we'll maybe see if they're able to address it in the January window or not. Other results. I mentioned Mark A of Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace played Man United, and they drew 0-0. Game of two halves, really. Man United were kind of on fire the first 40 minutes, but they weren't able to really get anything to count. I think Garnacho had couldn't finish on a 1v1, and then he hit the post with a pretty good shot. Diallo then had a rebound, and that also struck the bar as well. Xerxes started, couldn't really get involved, and Rasmus made it showing in the second half. Rashford didn't start. Garnacho did instead. Man United were good in the first half. In the second half, once Palace were able to grow in the game, they actually kind of had the better chances in the second half. I thought Nketiah grew into the game a little bit more, as did Sarr. And feels like Sarr is trying to get a little bit more comfortable as well. There was a moment when it kind of created a little bit cut in the box, was able to fool Dallo. When I get to Man United and Spurs, I'm going to focus a little bit on Dallo. As it was able to get its cutback and just dragged it wide, possible Palace could have even ended the game with the points here. Palace did look a little bit better. Other notes I had: Wharton was struggling, taking off in halftime. Jefferson Lerma came on, and he's just capable. You kind of forget about him as well. And actually, he looked like he played as a center back this past weekend. But he was one of the better players in Copa America for Colombia. He's a very good player as well. I like the idea that they've moved Kamada deeper. They were trying him a little bit more as kind of the attacking guy. They've since moved Kamada into kind of that midfield pivot role. No Decore this game. You hope he hasn't re-injured himself. Uh, but you'll be able to, Kamada's really good at getting the ball, and he's good at finding people's feet. You're able to fit on an extra attacker that way, so you can do Sarr and Kedia and Eza, or you can do you can you fit Mateta in there as well. So Palace still have a little bit more options when you play that way. Man United had the moments, but again, second half they were a little bit flat. And then for Swente, they were flat as well. They were dominant in that game, but still it ends 1-1 because of Eriksson Howler and then Ugarte apparently lost the ball a whole lot. Didn't have his best debut. Uh, it feels like Bruno can only really create for them, and he's been played, the third most minutes of any outfielder. And we maybe saw something else happen, for Spurs that maybe went into Bruno's mind. He's gonna get some rest. That's all I'll pretty much say there. Versus Twente, Harry Maguire played. And Harry Maguire, what happens on their goal is Harry Maguire and Lisandro Martinez just get way too upfield for no reason whatsoever. So they're trying to do a high line and just get lost for no reason. I think Ugarte actually makes a pretty good tackle, and then the ball just bounces off Ericsson. But you can't play a high line with Harry Maguire, and who do they bring in to maybe replace Harry Maguire in the team? Mateus Delict, and we're starting to get a little bit more kind of evidence that that's almost the same kind of player with a different name. Because Delict, I don't think can play in a high line either, and we just saw Mickey Van de Ven dribble through that entire team. And other results, we have Forest and Brighton in 2-2. Kind of the highlights or headline to talk about here is Morgan Gibbs White went for a 50-50 ball, caught João Pedro, and put him on uh, that drew a red. And Morgan Gibbs White had to miss the next game. João Pedro could possibly be injured actually because he wasn't able to feature this past weekend versus Brighton. Um, this past weekend versus Chelsea. Uh, Brighton seemed to have the lead, 2-2 lead, despite Forrest getting the opening goal. PK for Chris Wood, kind of a bit of a mistake for Carlos Baliba. Brighton were able to get the second goal with a brilliant free kick from Danny Welbeck. The first goal came with a Henselwood, a header, which was a bit of a surprise as well. But Forrest then changed things up. Nuno went to a couple subs, and Brighton's very high defensive line. I think it's Joe DaCosta was able to get free, has a square ball to Sosa, also a sub, and it was just a tap in for them to get the second. Brighton were just playing a too high a defensive line for their liking, and unfortunately for Brighton fans, and I guess their young coach, he didn't adjust playing Chelsea, and that was kind of the bugaboo that Chelsea really did exploit this past weekend. And then to end with everything else, couple 6 pointers here: Ipswich and Southampton, and with a draw 1-1. A couple great or two great. Oh, there was a first goal by Dibbling, clever little turn from him. I thought he impressed versus Man United the week before. The ball was played by Adam Lallana. It got a surprise start. They did pretty well. Southampton played a better team, better game than Ipswich. But they weren't able to get the points because Morrissey at the very end with a stunner himself. No Calvin Phillips this game. Morrissey was played along with someone else, and Ipswich have been doing just enough to survive. They were able to take a point. They've actually done pretty well to get a point in every game they played in since starting off the season with Liverpool and Man City. Uh, the other note I had was Southampton looked close to being competitive. They're lacking in the number 9 spot. Archer had a couple moments actually to make it 2-0. There was one when he did really well to actually create some of these chances, but again the finish is just off it. They're not really able to get a whole lot with their striker spot. Adam Armstrong to me doesn't really offer them enough. But the other thing too is the Southampton back line is one of the more weaker sides in the league with Bednarik and not necessarily Howard Bellis, but Bednarik and Jack Stevens, and it's just you kind of look at that as kind of a weakness for them. Otherwise, they do a pretty good job of controlling most games they're in. They're actually doing a pretty good job of getting some looks, and they dominated Ipswich when it came to chances, but it doesn't really matter. Ipswich were able to stay in, and when I look at Ipswich, they look out of the three, Leicester, Southampton, and Ipswich. Ipswich feels the most complete as far as being able to stay up. I feel like you can maybe believe in their coach a little bit more than Steve Cooper and Russell Morton. That could be just a belief that has no like firm evidence for it. That's just how I feel. But the main thing is the one thing you would look at is maybe they lack goals, but Delap is actually starting to could be a decent person to gamble on. some of the the performances that we've seen from him so far. But the main thing is I like the back line and midfield over the course of a season more than I do with Leicester's or Southampton's. Uh, I think Greaves and Axel Twanzoubi and Dario O'Shea. O'Shea has some Premier League experience playing for Burnley. I think that's a back line that can handle playing in a high line. That's something that not a lot of kind of not a lot of promoted sides can do. Someone like Man United can't even do that. I think Jacob Greaves has been a pretty good player to bring in. Now he did have a mistake for Aston Villa, but other than that, that's pretty solid. Leif Davies can be a little exposed, defensively because but he's a lot of fun going forward for them. And Delap, the way that he's able to get the ball inside his own half and just he's got an engine to be able to carry it. He's a big body as well. He kind of does look like Holland when he's on the ball. I don't want to get in trouble there. He just came from Man City. Maybe he has some experience there. Ipswich have gone to Man City and gotten some help. They got in Calvin Phillips. Calvin Phillips didn't play in this game, but he looked very good versus Aston Villa this past weekend when I get to their game. So that's where we are there. And then Leicester and Everton also ended 1-1. Stop of the game. It was a brutal rain throughout the entire game. There was even postponed like midway through, which you don't normally see. Goals from Ndai, really nice turn and finish from him, and then Mavlevide scored off a corner kick. Different Wakel from Shandaish here. We saw Lindstrom and Ndaye start. Midfield was Mangala and Decore, so a little bit different. And McNeil played through the middle, which is a little bit different. Dominic Calvert-Lewin up front. So Calvert-Lewin's able to stay fit. This could be enough for them to help out. Lindstrom, I thought I had a pretty nice debut. Nice aggressive attack minded. It seemed look he was goal minded as well. Something different that Jack Harrison normally offers. But he was subbed in the this past weekend, and Harrison came in and actually had the ball that helped get Everton the goal this past weekend. But the other things to talk about is Everton with two big chances to add a second. First was blocked by James Justin to stop a square ball. So pretty good defensive there by James Justin. Otherwise, it would have had Dye for a tap in. And the second was another Everton counter. Nice carry and feed by McNeil to find Calvert-Lewin and just again required a strong glove by the Leicester keeper. And we just saw how good the Leicester keeper is versus Arsenal. I still think the back line though is an issue, and but they are looking stronger going forward than they did last season. But the back line, to me, is a big problem, and we'll see. The note I had is we'll see if this changes with Jared Brathwaite or not. And we just got that answer because he returned this past weekend, and Everton got the result that they wanted this past weekend. And so that is where we are for week 5. See how we're doing for time. I'm not going to spend a ton of time really on the other games. It's probably what you would expect. I am going to talk a little bit about the Arsenal game, kind of what happens in depth, and maybe the Chelsea game. We'll see how it goes. But I'll get started with Man City and Newcastle. It ends 1-1. Goal from Gvardiol. Grealish does very well to get the ball in the wing, does well to get by Trippier. So something we don't always see Grealish doing is he takes on his man and gets by him, and then he has a really nice pass into the box. Finds Gvardiol, and then Gvardiol again sends Dan Burn the wrong way, and then chops back to his other foot, finds the net. And then Anthony Gordon with a PK. Clever build-up by Newcastle here. And again, the goal comes from probably where Rodri would have been. So first, Joe Linton shows deep for the ball, then plays it to Bruno. Bruno's able to turn well. He's able to get past Kovacic and able to get past Rico Lewis. And immediately finds a 3-ball to Anthony Gordon for him to chase. Kyle Walker's playing it on sides. Gordon's head goes around Ederson and draws enough contact to buy a PK, and then Gordon is able to put it away. And then there was a later PK shout where Joe Linton was able to draw contact, also Kyle Walker, but nothing really came from that. So we get the first look with Man City without Rodri, and we got a bit of a different change. We saw Rico Lewis and Kovacic played together, and with Gundogan almost played in like the 10 role, where you would have imagined that maybe that would be where Phil Foden would work, or maybe you could try Bernardo Silva instead of Rico Lewis. Bernardo Silva and Kovacic, maybe not the best physically, but I don't want to imagine Rico Lewis is the best physically. I would have played Rico Lewis, frankly, where Kyle Walker was at right back. And then Bernardo Silva on the wing, Gundogan kind of in the 10 role, and then Grealish. So one thing you're looking at is not a team that has a whole lot of legs in them. And then you have Holland. Holland's the only one that can make some runs. And basically, Newcastle realized that. Newcastle didn't think there was going to be any kind of threat other than, when Holland was dropping for the ball, maybe Holland was getting it. Dan Burn and Shea could follow Holland because there wasn't really going to be a threat in behind from Bernardo Silva or Grealish trying to make a run in behind them, like maybe a Savio or a Doku would have done. Grealish had a good game, but kind of looking more at Bernardo Silva instead of Savio. Savio did play both minutes or the full 90 in the midweek in the EFL game. Maybe that's why he was given a rest. He did come on in the second half, but I felt like it was too late. I thought Phil Foden came on a little bit too late. There was a moment as well when Gundogan got on the ball. It looked like Nick Pope was out of position, but Gundogan tried to chip him from like 45 yards out when he could have just played it to Holland. Gundogan was giving the ball away a little bit too much in this kind of advanced role. I feel like he's a little bit better when he's played deeper, when he can help with build-up, but also he can be a little he can be an option when he gets into the box, not necessarily the guy that's leading your attack when you're going forward. So I think Pep maybe outsmarted himself, and then with Newcastle, we see Trippier, Shar, Burn, and Hall. Again, the Burn and Shar thing, you would have looked at that and being like, this could be an issue. Bruno, Tonali, and Joe Linton. So we see Tonali and Bruno actually get their first starts together, at least this season. Joe Linton had a day in that second half where I mentioned how Man City were a little weak physically. That wouldn't have happened with Rodri playing, but Kovacic, when Kovacic and Rico Lewis and whoever was near him, Joe Linton was winning those 50-50 duels. And then up front we had Murphy, Gordon, and Barnes. No Ishak was available, and that kind of changed a little bit the front line. And that's where we have the game. I mean, one thing to kind of talk about here is Newcastle were very brave in their pressing in a way that I haven't seen teams do this to Man City. Again, they couldn't really get Holland going deep, despite again Shar and Dan Burn being asked to handle him. But just the way that they were playing, and they were doing well to actually track him and be as tight as possible. So when Holland was getting the ball trying to show forward, he was either losing it or just he was never able to really turn and get around him. He was always like having to play it off to someone else, and they were never able to get him to where he could get behind one of those center backs following him. The other thing too is because you took Holland a little bit out of the equation when Man City were trying to go use Ederson. Usually the Man City like using Ederson as kind of the extra man to help them when they have their basically they beat any kind of press if possible. Newcastle were doing Anthony Gordon was doing amazing to track Ederson like he was an outfield player. He wasn't allowing him to have any kind of time to breathe on the ball, and Ederson they actually forced him into more big errors than I've ever really seen. In fact, there was one when like the commentators loved he did like a back heel to get out of pressure. The commentators loved it. I don't think Pep did. Ederson was under pressure that I just again I'm a Liverpool fan. I've watched Klopp's Liverpool try to press Ederson as well. There've been a couple of times, but I haven't seen it like this. And that was an amazing pressing job by Anthony Gordon, who player of the match because of that, and also he was able to convert the PK. But also Joe Linton. Joe Linton just kind of took control in that second half. Uh, I mean, we look at the stats. We have 11 for Newcastle and 16 for Man City. Six on target. One big chance though. Man City had the majority of the ball. You would expect Newcastle with 261 passes. Not that much, but it didn't really matter. Newcastle with the majority, with the higher XG, 1.5 to Man City's 0.91. So to get started with Man City, I do feel like he maybe got a little too cute. Not starting Phil Foden was a bit of a surprise, considering no Kevin De Bruyne available. Gundogan in the 10 role was just didn't really suit him. Rico Lewis in the midfield role next to Kovacic. I feel like Bernardo Silva offers you a little bit more there, and then that way you could fit in Savinho or someone else on the wing. Maybe you could even Phil Foden on the wing. And then Kyle Walker again, just he it feels like he's struggling. John Stone's not being played. Was a bit of a surprise too. He's the hero versus Arsenal. They were flat. I mean the similar kind of situation happened here where uh, Newcastle were playing a little bit more when City in the second half. City did have control a little bit of the game. Um, you know, Newcastle was sitting in a block, and City had to find a way to break them down, and they really couldn't. No 28 shots in the second half, like we saw versus Arsenal. Newcastle were fine, but Newcastle also had all 11 players, so that kind of, factored in a little bit too. But, again, no Rodri for these cutback goals. No Kevin De Bruyne to try to create some magic either. Phil Foden hasn't really found his, scoring boots, or hasn't really found his form from last season yet. He did have a couple of efforts, but all of them were right at Pope. The other thought I had was Man City selling Alvarez to Atletico looks a little bit more baffling by the day. Also, Cole Palmer last season, but Alvarez, you get an offer for 90 million. You can't really refuse that, but they weren't able to bring anyone else in. I feel like they were expecting Oscar Bob to be able to feature for them. He was like the player of the season, or he was their performer of the summer essentially, and they lost him to a broken leg. They're about to get him back maybe by November. So maybe Pep has kind of the long term outlook where Oscar Bob will kind of be in these situations to help them out. He's a player that you can easily forget about, but he's very very good that he's shown. But outside of that, they do look a little toothless when they don't have Phil Foden firing from range, or they don't have Kevin De Bruyne to be able to create and fire from range as well. There's a lot of players that are very good and technical on the ball, but you don't really have a whole lot of that final action. And when again, they weren't able to get Holland involved either. They weren't really able to find Holland involved. So bit of a surprise, but maybe not. First game without Roger, you expected maybe this could be a little bit sticky. It was at Newcastle. Newcastle's a pretty hard place to play. It's not the end of the world to only get a point, but it definitely uplifted a couple of teams, which we'll get to for the second game. A couple of things to talk about with Newcastle. Um, it's I think the issue for Eddie Howe, aside from the back line, is when he has to maybe change the game a little bit. What he has for his bench isn't really game changing. Longstaff coming in for Tenali, just that's not the same level anymore. So you get weaker there. Willock coming in midfield can do a job, but in the forward line, he's kind of a runner with the ball. He can be clever, but you don't really think of him as kind of an attack minded forward kind of player. Livermento on for Trippier. Uh, it's just you don't really have without Alexander Ishak, and they don't have Callum Wilson available anymore. They do look a little, I won't say toothless, but a little light. I guess I can say so. Uh, Newcastle have ambitions to get back into Champions League. I feel like it's going to be hard for them. I feel like they can have a good season. Maybe they can do another cup run with Eddie Howe. But it does feel things are a little bit light, and apparently they had financial fair play issues over the summer. That's why they had to sell some players like Minta, which Minta would have possibly helped them a little bit. Uh, so we'll see what they're able they also had to sell Elliot Anderson. They sold him to Nottingham Forest. So Newcastle kind of they can celebrate this. Over a full season, I just don't think like a back line with Dan Burns is going to help you. Now, maybe eventually they will be able to get Sven Botman back, and maybe finally when they get him back, he'll be back fully recovered from his injuries. But who knows? He's had two ACL, I think, back to back, so that is a bit of a concern as well. But no reason to pile on. Very good result for Newcastle, and just nothing else. I think it's just very good that Newcastle showed you actually can get City if you press them high and be brave. And Eddie Howe was brave, and his team was brave, and it's good that they were rewarded for it. And then, so the result, because it happened early, the first fixture had to be an uplift feeling for Arsenal coming into this, and they started on fire. Martinelli gets an early goal, and then Trossard makes it 2-0. And it was kind of funny. He was able to play after the red card, but because the game on the weekend or in the midweek, that kind of canceled it out because technically it's still an FA game. And so feels like they can maybe be looked at. I saw the Athletic complaining there. Trossard is one of their better finishes. But here, Arsenal were just it took a while for them to get going, like maybe 10, 12 minutes before they even had a shot. But they really did. All of a sudden, Leicester couldn't keep the ball at all, and Vardy started to kind of lose it anytime they were trying to get it on him. Saliba was just kind of just bullying, and Vardy was losing the ball. And then when that was happening, Man City Arsenal were having no issues to create. And the first goal comes from Saka getting on the ball after Saliba gets it off Vardy. Saka gets on the ball, and he uses Timber making an overlap run. This is something that I haven't seen Ben White do nearly enough. Now he has done in the past. They were using Martin Odegaard versus Aston Villa to do this overlap run, but Timber just makes this run on the wing. He's not really marked, and then Timber has the ability to thread in a pass through the lines because a number of legs are here, and he's able to thread it in, and it finds Martinelli. Martinelli has a nice little hit. Even before this, Martinelli had a moment when again Saliba gets the ball off Vardy. Saka in the middle of the field plays in Martinelli, and Martinelli hit that shot wide. But early on, Leicester could not really have any kind of control in the game, and the second goal comes from Calafiore, almost looking like he had a PK shout. Nothing was given, and then Arsenal basically score 30 seconds after that, where Calafiore gets back on sides, and I think Martinelli has the ball, and he also does the same kind of thing that Timber does. He threads it in beautifully into Timber's into Trossard's path, and what by Calafiore getting back on sides, what he's doing is he's taking the attention for Ralph Faes. Ralph Faes has to mark him, and just I think it's Harry Winks. Harry Winks just loses Trossard, and Trossard again, first time ball after a shot into the box, and he's able to find the corner. So kind of a merit. The two goals kind of mirrored each other. And so we get the 2-0 at halftime. You figured this will be easy for Arsenal. Leicester didn't have any kind of threat in that first half. And lo and behold, the Vardy finally gets able to get a little revenge on Saliba. Saliba gets a little too cute, fouls him. So free kick for Leicester, and then the ball whipped in by I think it's Bernete, and James Dustin just has a really nice header. Is able to kind of loop over David Raya. The header maybe even deflects off Kai Havertz. Maybe that kind of froze Raya as well. So then you get to 2-1. And then it felt like Arsenal had a number of corner kicks and a number of chances where, out of nowhere, Leicester City's keeper, I think it's Hermanson, turned into, prime Buffon or Manuel Neuer or Allison, I guess you can say. Just he turned into a video game like keeper, keeping everything out. Uh, and it felt like Arsenal had retaken control of the game. It felt like it was only a matter of time before it'd be 3-1. And then there's a long ball sent in on the left hand side of the field, and I think it might be Christensen is able to make a run, and he just sends a hopeful ball crossfield to cross all the way to James Justin's path. The ball's into him in the box, and he just takes Cal Fiore is there. I don't think he's thinking Justin's going to hit this first time. And Justin has a volley, and he turns into Francis Pavard from the World Cup a few years ago. If people haven't seen that goal, it's a first time hit, and he just gets the curl to go around. Raya has no chance. It was goal of the weekend, and Leicester all of a sudden get into this, and it's 2-2, and then Arsenal just put a just unload a little bit on Leicester. And again, Hermanson's able to make just point blank save after save, despite all of the domination in Arsenal were able to do. There was one moment when Kai Havertz did a pretty good job to collect it and then had a turn. But again, he's like, I don't know, 5 yards away from the goalie, and he hits it right at him. I mean, it's hard to say because he's trying to hit it as hard as possible. He keeps it low, but if Kai Havertz is able to pick the corner, he scores easily. There are a couple kind of situations like that. There was one when Leicester had a really terrible turnover and gets the ball to Trossard. Trossard's probably the one player that Arsenal fans would have wanted in this position. And Trossard does well, but he looks like he goes for placement than power, and he's trying to pick out the corner. And Hermanson's able to get a leg or get a glove onto that with a very good save. Like Hermanson made, I think like 11 saves. They said a lot of them were point blank. It just didn't make sense that this game was tied 2-2. And then Arteta did something different. Arteta brought on a youngster in Ethan Nayori. I think he's like 17 now. We've actually seen him I think he's got the youngest Premier League minutes when he came on for Brentford a couple of years ago. He was a 15-year-old. But I don't think Arteta's just doing this because one, no Odegaard. They're kind of struggling a little bit for kind of quality to bring on the bench. But he got a start in the EFL week, and I think he ended up having a brace. So I don't think Arteta is doing this just to give the kid some game minutes here. Especially you see it here. The game was 2-2. He brought in Neori on to actually be a game changer, and he actually did. he comes in and first couple of touches he gets the ball on the outside the box, and he has a crack with his left foot, and again it forces a save. There was a moment in the 90th minute where he's able to get by. I think it's Christensen. He draws a corner kick, and Arsenal nearly scored on that corner kick. And then at the end, I think it's Saka is able to get past Christensen as well, and then Saka is able to basically creates a corner kick. It's the 17th that Arsenal have had, and you figured all of the attention is going to be on Gabriel, and it was. And Osaka, whether intentionally or not, hits it over Gabriel, over everyone, and Trossard is just at the back post, completely unmarked. Leicester just lost him entirely, and Trossard's just trying to hit this first time into the into the danger area to see if maybe he can get a deflection, maybe something happens. I don't think Trossard's going for goal necessarily, and it deflects off in duty to go in. 3-2, that gives Arsenal the lead, and then Arsenal able to get another one with Kai Havertz. And so that is where we are with this game. This is one of those where it starts to give you a little belief if you're an Arsenal fan, and if you're a Leicester fan, this can be this loss can lead to others because uh, the only time the thing that immediately went to was when I think it was Bournemouth. Yeah, I would think it was Arsenal and Bournemouth like a season or two ago in February when Rice Nelson had I think it was also a corner kick as well, had a wonder strike that was able to go in, and I think it gave Arsenal like a 3-2 lead at the very end, and you just saw everyone just fall to their feet, dejected, and Bournemouth struggled to recover after that, from what I remember. Arsenal used that and galvanized. Were able to galvanize at least until later in the season. So this was unbelievable. I mean, 35 plus shots, and then you're only tied because James Dustin turned into again World Cup's France. Pavard. Arsenal would have been kicking themselves for dropping points because of not just outplaying Leicester and doing more than enough to win, but on top of City dropping points. It just to be able to win this way, it does allow you to keep the belief, and we'll see what they do this coming week versus PSG, which I think happens later this afternoon. Another set piece was able to come to the rescue. Is that really sustainable? I would usually say no, but the way that just Gabriel is able to just beat anyone 1v1, I don't know anymore. Um, and they were clever. They actually used Gabriel a little bit as a decoy. I mean, 4.6 XG, 35 shots, 16 on target, 9 big chances for Arsenal, 6 in the second half, 6 coming in the second half, 13 saves for that Leicester keeper, and touches in the penalty area, 77 to 11. Possession exactly what you would expect. So uh, it's not just to come with Arsenal. It's not going to be the same without Odegaard. It's what you expect. And I'm not going to say that they're better, but one thing Arteta has done these last 2 games is whether or not Ben White's been, fitness has been in question, and maybe that's what forced the change. Maybe Arteta got lucky. He's brought in Timber, and Timber's got a little more ball making ability, ball playing ability than Ben White has. Maybe Ben White's a little better defensively, but Timber allows you to do a little bit more things than you normally would, as does Calafiore. Calafiore again was just everywhere. He was unbelievable. The kind of touches, the runs that he was making, he was showing up in midfield, he was showing up in the box, he was going out wide, he was showing he can play on the wing. He was making decisions when to run, when to not, and he was getting in behind with ease. He was very very good. He looks very good anytime he has a cameo. It feels like Zinchenko or Arteta was trying Timber there. I feel like Calafiore is going to be their starting starting left back. He makes them better. And then the other thought I had was Kai Havertz had an interesting kind of performance again, but because he could have put some of those away, he didn't. But one thing you can say is I like when Havertz and Trossard are able to combine. They seem to work well together. Uh, yeah, that's one thing that sometimes they haven't always been able to do. Sometimes and that Trossard's really enjoying this kind of role when with Odegaard being out because it feels like he's kind of been the guy that's the main guy essentially, at least in the middle. Havertz sometimes drops in the midfield, but more times than not, it is Trossard. And Trossard, we saw it for Spurs. We didn't necessarily see it versus Man City because Trossard was taken out, his own doing. But we saw versus Spurs. Trossard had a couple of times when he was able to drop in, and he has that that kind of Odegaard ability to see when it passes on, and he was able to play in Martinelli a couple of times. So there is a lot of this can be chemistry wise. It's not just talent. Who's the best talent? They could have brought in a striker. They decided not to. Uh, and I don't know if it's necessarily, be sustainable over the course of the season or not. Another thing to talk about was Nairi's cameo. Ethan Nairi's cameo was positive as well, and so we'll see. I can't imagine he's going to get minutes necessarily this midweek for PSG, but maybe later on. It could be as young as uh, if he does get on some minutes versus PSG. He is only 17. I wonder if he'll be able to, beat Theo Walcott's record for youngest ever to get Champions League minutes for Arsenal. We'll have to look that up or not. Uh, and then another thing to end with is what else did I have to talk about? I guess. Raheem Sterling. Raheem Sterling is still, sat with a bit of a bench role, bit of a backup role. Came on a little bit in the second half as well. Maybe we'll see him versus PSG. I don't know, or second half. Still waiting for Raheem Sterling to kick on for them. Gabriel Jesus came on in the second half. He helped kind of lead for the fourth goal, but he still doesn't really look fit either. So still ways for this Arsenal team to improve. Again, Mikel Merino as well apparently is back to training, so that gives them a boost. I think Tomiyasu is as well. So Arsenal are starting to get a little more healthy. Odegaard's not going to be out for that long. I think that is what they said. If you're Leicester City, it's hard for me not to say this is a side that's going to go down again. You can't really rely on two James Justin Wonder goals. Um, and it's another time when they've dropped points late. I think it's Fulham and Palace as well. The Port going forward, they only have 40. Really. Now they were able to get a pretty decent draw the first week for Spurs, but they were outshot like 25-5. Uh, Vardy is all alone. One thing I'm surprised is we haven't seen Fatua Ishiwaku since really that first game week for Spurs when he did nothing wrong in my opinion. But since Leicester since that game, Leicester have tried whether it's Andre Ayew or in this game it was Bernete. So a bit of a surprise there. And when Bernete is not playing, through on the wing or if he's not playing through the middle, uh, they have that. They have the other guy that they brought in. He- I can't remember his name. Uh, so and one final thing to talk about, Elian Kunis. I think that's his name. So, anyways, one final thing to end with is it was a spectacular performance by Hermanson. 9 saves, and again, number of them were point blank at them. So that is where we are for that game. Let's see how we're doing for time. We got through two of them. It's not too bad. All right. Liverpool and Wolves, 2-1, thanks to Kanate. Liverpool were not great in this game, but they thankfully didn't have to be. Then Nori tied it, made things a little sticky. It's the same kind of situation where, because of what happens with Man City, Liverpool, it becomes like a must-win kind of game, and you get a little bit nervous. That's not. And then the Salah PK, basically, Jota was responsible for both of these goals. Jota got a start over Darwin Núñez. Darwin Núñez apparently had some illness, so thankfully not an injury. Jota back at Wolves and was able to be responsible for a couple of these goals. That said, Liverpool were not necessarily at their best. I don't think that's really a controversial take to have. One thing I noticed was it seemed like the shape did change a little bit. I don't know if Arne Slot did it because he was worried a little bit more of what Wolves have to offer, but it seemed like it was almost back to what we saw, a former Klopp kind of formation. It was almost like a 4-3-3 with Alexis kind of being deep, and with Soboslai and Gravenberch almost like dual eights, a little further ahead of the ball. We didn't really see the double pivot nearly as much, and we saw Trent Alexander-Arnold and Robertson played as bombing fullbacks again. Uh, but the main problem to me was sometimes when Jota's kind of dropping deep, when you don't have Darwin Núñez, just Liverpool's kind of attack. It's not the same. The other thing too is Luis Diaz has been on a flyer. But some of these times, these kind of situations, these kind of sticky games, I feel like maybe he's not really the best. Now he was up against Semedo. Maybe you would have liked him being able to get him behind, and instead they were kind of using him and they were using Robinson to get him behind him. But I just felt this maybe would have been a better game to kind of play Cody Gakpo. Gakpo is probably my preferred guy on the left, just because I feel like he's got a little bit more finishing quality. That said, Diaz has been absolutely flying, so that's maybe I don't need to be too harsh there. Salah didn't have his best game either. To me, it felt very similar a little bit in the beginning to Nottingham Forest. Wolves were doing enough to just kind of defend well. They've got a Wolves have a pretty good midfield themselves. In the beginning of the game, Liverpool were doing a pretty good job to actually turn them over. Actually, Sam Johnson was having a nightmare of a start, and then Sam Johnson was able to, the keeper for Wolves was able to have a pretty nice stop when I think it's Robertson was able to get in behind. He has a cross in, and Szoboszlai, point blank range, maybe could have done a little bit better to pick out a corner. Instead, he hit it right at Johnson, but Johnson was able to save it. Uh, and then, I think there's a free kick awarded to Liverpool. Trent Alexander-Arnold sent it in, so you have Kanate and Van Dijk ready for trying to be there for the free kick. Liverpool able to keep possession, and then basically Jota is able to take on Semedo, get runs to the byline, is able to get the cross off before Semedo can block it, and then Kanate already in the area is able to outjump everyone. You get the first goal there. Liverpool were quite comfortable, but second half, Wolves kind of grew into the game a little bit more. Liverpool weren't able to turn them over nearly as much. It felt like Andre and Lamena started to grow into the game a little bit more. Yao Gomez was kind of everywhere as well. And then once uh, Gary O'Neill took off Bellegarde and brought on Forbes, it seemed like their attack did change a little bit. They had a little more directness. They had a little more kind of threat. And another thing too is Mateus Cunha was starting to. He started on the wing. Was starting to play a little bit more centrally, and the goal comes from Mateus Cunha being able to be a little clever. He's able to lose Alexis and Gravenberch. He's able to get on the ball, and then Gravenberch isn't able to cut him off. He's able to get the ball in the middle, carries it for a little bit, and then tries to play in. Larson making a run. Uh, Larson possibly, he's faster than he looks. He's quite a big lad himself. It looks like he's going to get the better of Kanate and Van Dyke, and then Robinson does a very good job to cut it out with a slide tackle. It looks like that's going to be the end of the danger, and then Ibrahim Kanate decides to kind of try to shield it off. He thinks maybe Allison's going to come out, and Allison doesn't come out quick enough. Kanate catches shouldered off or pressured off the ball. It's really hard to explain what happens. But it looks like there's not going to be any danger. If anything, Kanate can even kick it out for give away a corner kick. You don't want to do that, but uh, anything would have been better than what happened because Larson's able to still get on to the ball, keep it in play, and he squares it into the box, and then Liverpool can't clear it, and then Aït-Nour is able to get it on the tap in. So 1-1. Probably the way that the second half went, maybe you would have expected that. There was one moment early in the game in the second half where I think Lamena had a really terrible pass back. It went right into Salah, and so basically, the keeper was out of position there, and Salah had a chance to go for the empty net and just got it all wrong. And then there were a couple moments in the second half where it felt like Salah actually was in behind and maybe even had a square pass to Curtis Jones or Szoboszlai, and just Salah has no right foot, and just the pass was way too weak, and Will's able to cut that out. But there, it doesn't matter because Jota is able to kind of save the day. Trent Alexander Arnold gets on the ball and sends a cross into the box, hopeful cross, and or Jota does just enough to just uh make it kind of annoying for Semedo, and Semedo just kind of brings him down, and then Salah's able to bury the PK. So again, not a ton to talk about. Only 10 shots for Liverpool. Again, when Darwin Núñez doesn't play, I feel like they generally produce fewer shots. It's just less. Darwin Núñez is able to just he'll always create chaos into the box, and just he's so much handful for center backs that Jota isn't that kind of player. I like Jota when he's able to get on the ball, maybe from like the wing side when he's able to cut in and to do maybe a run into the box that kind of goes unnoticed. When he's kind of the feature guy, and he's kind of being asked to take on the center backs himself, it's not you don't have that same kind of presence, and you're trying to you're not able to create yourself. You're kind of reduced to crossing the balls in. Jota was able to buy the PK, but this was a little bit nervy because it did remind me again to a little bit to the Nottingham Forest time period. So Wolves was only 8 shots themselves, though. I mean, Liverpool's still good defensively. The goal they gave up was goofy. At 0.63 xG. Uh, Three big chances for Liverpool. Probably the biggest one was a Szoboszlai one. Uh, So, job done. I mean, Ryan Gravenberch, I think, had was like 8 for 8 with his duels. He still seems to be strong. Alexis seems to be strong as well. Sloboslai's team role in the team is a little bit different because he sometimes has to be a number 10, but it's also sometimes asked to be like a number 8 job to kind of, if Trent Alexander-Arnold goes up, usually, Sloboslai is the first one to sprint back. He's asked to do a whole lot of running, and I think that's possibly gotten a little bit too exhausted him. I think that's affected his quality in the final third, which is unfortunate. The other night I had Robinson had probably his best game so far as in possession, but I also think it was similar to what his role was before Slot, came in, where he wasn't asked to be kind of a third center back. He wasn't asked to be, helping out and build up. He was asked to be a little bit higher up and to just be a bombing fullback, going forward, making those runs and getting those crosses in. But he was also really good defensively as well. He saved a goal. Really, I think Trent Alexander-Arnold maybe saved a goal as well. Where there was a ball maybe that was going to find Mateus Cunha, and Trent was able to stick out a leg just last minute to get it away. And then there was in the second half there was Forbes was able to look, free on a ball, and it looks like he was going to cut around Trent Alexander-Arnold, and then there was just Kanate that was there to block out that. So that could have been maybe a sticky situation as well. Uh, but there's not really nothing to critique a little bit. It was another case where you're watching this, and I watched the West Ham game as well. Liverpool won 5-1. Um, just the moments when I see Alexis, or I can envision Alexis in the place of Szoboszlai, I just feel like it's better. It's better suited. And just if you get or able to get Zubimendi and Gravenberch, that would be spectacular. But we'll see if they're able to do that or not. Another thing too is with the West Ham game, when you're not asked to play a number 6 that's just kind of all by themselves, when you're doing this quote unquote double pivot where you have 2 in that midfield, I think Indo can do a job. I really can. I really thought he did a pretty good job versus West Ham as well. West Ham played a relatively fair, fairly strong 11. Played their starters, so Indo was able to handle himself for versus West Ham. So I feel like Arne Slot needs to trust Indo a little bit more, and we'll see if he does or not. Maybe we'll see him in the Champions League versus Bologna. We'll have to see. If not, you still have Tyler Morton there as well. With Wolves, this is a side that did get the better of Unai Emery last week as well. At least for the first half, they are losing. No Craig Dawson here. They know who's an important center back for them. No, it's weird because Dawson doesn't have a lot of pace to him, but he's just clever. So that was a pretty big miss for them. Tati Gomez is usually kind of played more kind of out wide than necessarily the center back. Bruno was played. Hugo Bruno was or Santiago Bruno was played because they lost Mosquera. So it was a little bit of a makeshift kind of Wolves side. There was talks that maybe there was a virus in the side as well. So uh, the attack looks a little bit light since they've lost Neto, but Cunha has goals in him. I think Larson does as well, and I liked what I saw from Forbes. So I think as long as the management doesn't get too reactionary and gives Gary O'Neill some time, I do think they have enough to stay up, maybe just by the skin of their teeth. I mean, the midfield is enough by itself, but no one knows how they'll do with game load or with injury. And then a couple other games to highlight with Aston Villa and Ipswich. It ends 2-2 with Delap. Great first time finish. Nice little cross by Jack Clark, who got his first start. And then Morgan Rogers, mistakes a little bit here by Ipswich, so a little bit of their own doing. A couple of Villa are pressing them, and I think it's the final ball comes from I believe it's Jacob Graves, who I've talked about. I liked, but he made a bit of a mistake here. He's just trying to clear the ball. He just does it kind of out of control. He does it without any thought of where it's going to go, and he hits it right at Watkins in the box. Watkins then one times it to Rogers, and Rogers is able to find the net, and then Watkins in the second half, crossed by Leon Bailey, is able to find him. Watkins is able to have a nice finish in 2-1. 2-1, despite Villa kind of being a little bit outplayed. It was weird. It was a weird game. No one really had any control with it. It was I think Watkins talked about it afterwards. It was kind of a basketball game, and it really was. And the more Ipswich were able to kind of stay in it. Konsa tries to go upfield a little bit with the ball. Konsa's a center back, and he tries a pass to try to find Leon Bailey, and it's cut out. So they lose the ball. So Konsa's the right back, and he's out of position now. And just there's a ball, it's free ball played into a channel for Delap to run into. Diego Carlos doesn't close it off, doesn't try to shut him down. And then finally, when Delap's able to take him on, Diego Carlos just gets flat-footed. Uh, Clever little feat by Delap to do a little step over and then to go past him on the left foot, and then he's able to find the goal with his left foot. Really nice goal here by Delap, and he scored a couple of goals now where you see a first-time finish, you see a little dribbling ability to be able to get by a person with his feet, and he scored a worldie of a goal versus Fulham just a couple of weeks ago. So Delap's starting to get going for them, which is good for Ipswich because they need some goals. The only one you look at that maybe has goals in him is Omari Hutchinson. So uh, if Delap can get going, I actually think Ipswich is going to be the first one out of the three to really feel safe. But we'll have they only have 4 points, so there's still a lot of ways for that to not happen. Uh, the story is on Aston Villa just a little bit because no John McGinn, so Leon Bailey played. You actually, Bailey has the cross that helps get the second goal, but Leon Bailey uh, wasn't really doing enough defensively. And the few times when Leif Davies and Jack Clark were able to do some overlaps together, Konza was forced into 2v1s. Another thing that was happening was Onana was getting on the ball, and he was just he likes going out. He likes being safe with the ball. He can carry it, but as far as passing wise, he likes passing it to Tielemans to make other decisions, or he likes passing it wide, or maybe going backwards. He's not really the most kind of inventive passer, and so I thought he was kind of struggling a little bit here. Tielemans was able to find a few people, but it wasn't nearly as impactful either. Jacob Ramsey being played, he's not the same kind of player that he's not like for like really that they would normally be missing, and so a little kind of uh, I guess drop that probably they wouldn't have Emery wouldn't have wanted. They've been getting lucky though. They were down to 2 goals to Everton. They were down to Wolves recently as well, and able to win in the Champions League. We're able to we'll see what they were able to do versus Bayern Munich. It feels like Unai Emery does have Champions League on his mind. He subbed up Ollie Watkins with 30 minutes to go in the second half. Brought on John Duran, but it wasn't enough. They weren't able to really create enough to win the game. They only had 7 shots. Ipswich with 15, 4 big chances for Ipswich as well. 10 corner kicks for 0 for Ipswich versus Aston Villa. So that kind of says a little bit where the game was. It's not what you would expect. The other thought I had was, I mentioned it before, because Ezra Konsa is being forced to play a little bit out wide as a fullback. I've never really liked it. I've never liked it when he's done for England. I never really liked it. I could see it in a back three, but I never really have liked it. There was a game last season where Brentford really did exploit it with Sergio Reguilon. He was able to get in behind him. It's different when you're playing as a fullback than necessarily in the box. I just feel like he's better center back. So you're missing Matty Cash. Matty Cash's ability to go forward, but Matty Cash's ability on the ball, and just Matty Cash's just kind of defensive awareness at the fullback spot. So you don't really think of Matty Cash as really a defensive-minded player, but it's just I do think they're missing a little bit of that. Also, the goal comes from Konza just being a little annoyed, and where Villa aren't really able to create anything. He feels like he has to be the creator. He plays a pass that probably Matty Cash wouldn't have played. So there's been a change where after Everton or after there's a championship game versus Young Boys, Emery subbed off Beauregard to bring in Diego Carlos and to move Konza out. I don't think that's really helped them. So hopefully, maybe Emery Martinez goes back to Bogard, maybe trusting him, or maybe eventually Matty Cash will get back healthy. And the Onana ball playing ability, just he needs to figure out a way to be a little bit more, I guess risk taking would be the word, or a little more. He needs to see a little bit more vision. If not, in games when you can't really, it's not really open. Onana is a brilliant with making ball carry, like we saw versus Arsenal. Uh, He's also really good at tracking back and just being amazing at stopping transition goals, at least through the middle. Ipswich were attacking out on the wings. Uh, it could have been more of a game for Ross Barkley, but again, it's kind of picking at hairs. It's not that bad. And then Ipswich, like I said, a lot of positives for those two draws after the opening two games that they had. And then with Manchester United and Tottenham, and I'll do this game and I'll do the Chelsea game as far as kind of just kind of detailed ish ways because I don't want it to be a 3 hour episode. Man United and Spurs. One and with 3 minutes into the game with Brennan Johnson, just Mickey Van de Ven runs past the entire midfield and back line, and then it's a easy square ball for Johnson. The goal comes from Man United trying to go for a counter, I think. And Bruno has Garnacho maybe open for a ball, but he mishits it. Spurs recover that. I think it's Udogi. He's able to stop that. But Rashford, it looks like actually is going to be able to pounce on that Udogi touch, but he then has a heavy touch himself, and it's like Garnacho misreads the situation. Maybe he misreads the touch, and he runs away from the ball than necessarily just trying to block Van de Ven off. And Van de Ven, is able to he reads the situation better and is able to break onto the ball, and then from there Man United have issues because there's a lot of space there. Van de Ven is as fast as is you don't. It's not really a center back in that situation. He's like a sprinter, and just or Ugarte is too late to recognize the danger. Delict as well, and then Kobe Mano as well, and then Mazurai. Mazurai doesn't realize what is coming his way either. There's just Van de Ven just starts with a not really a jog, a little bit of uh, what would you call it? A when you're anyways, he's not really in full out sprint, and then he changes he shows a little bit of a different kind of pace, and that is a stride. I have to think about it. Van de Ven starts off with a little bit of a stride, and then he goes into outright sprint, and just that kind of change in pace, just I think it surprises Mazurai with how quick he is, and he's able to he has a touch, and he's able to go past Mazurai and Delict like they're not even there, and then from there it's a really easy square pass wide open back post to Brennan Johnson with no one near him. And the reason why no one is near him is because Dallo has decided to just switch off and just he doesn't think Van de Ven's going to be able to get that cross off, and he does. Man United came into this where they were upset with what happened with Twente in the midweek. Maybe upset what happened with Palace, where they weren't able to get the result they wanted, but they at least performed okay versus Crystal Palace. But there was a lot of like negative energy coming into this game. There was a lot of kind of nervous energy. Ten Hag talked about how the players haven't really. I always get a little concerned when you hear the talk about not wanting it enough, not enough passion, or because at that point you're going after the mindset. You're not really going after. Oh, you don't think it's like a tactic thing. But that said, maybe that is the case because Dallo just completely switched off where he shouldn't have. So there's a lot of negative energy coming into this. You could feel it in the stands, and then after that, just the stands just got. Anytime Man United lost the ball, anytime maybe Man United looked like they were going to be in trouble, just it seemed like the pressure just seemed to build more and more on these players, and so that wasn't really great. It was only 1-0 for most of the first half. There were a couple of chances though, as the game was 1-0, but Spurs were creating chances for fun. There was some beautiful combinations between Madison and Kulusevski. Talked about that even before, where Onana had to make a couple pretty big saves. There was one chance where Mazurai got caught upfield, Delict as well, and then just Werner was in behind. Onana had to come out as well. It's a good save by Onana, but Werner should probably finish that. Brendan Johnson got on the ball again after some pretty clever play by Spurs, and Brendan Johnson just hit the post, unlucky on that shot. Spurs were just again. I think they created 12 chances in that first half. It was before the red card that even happened. Man United were all over the place. That said, Man United did have some chances themselves. There was one moment when Garnacho was able to get a square ball into the box that Xerxes does well to get on the end of, but just not enough. Just not enough power on it. Pretty easy save for Vicario. And then there was a moment when Rashford had a chance, pretty nice cross field on the pretty nice switch cross. Finds Garnacho back post. He connects pretty well on it, and it just kind of hits the near post. But these chances were coming few and far between, and they were just coming from it being an open game where Spurs did not really. It felt like they did not really respect what United had. To be honest, the other thing too was Xerxes was trying to drop for the ball and just wasn't being strong enough with it. He was kind of losing it with some poor touches. Rashford couldn't really get going outside of a couple runs either. And then you get to the Bruno red card, and it is a foul on Madison. It's the back of his shoe. It's not really the cleat. I was surprised that it was upheld. To be honest, I don't think it's a red. But before that, the United were getting outplayed anyways. And then, second half happens. Man United decide not to sit deep, not to do what Arsenal did. Decide to try to be really front-footed, and it's brave, but it's also if you concede 2 minutes go in the second half, it's kind of stupid. Dallo gets caught upfield. Lisandro Martinez gets caught upfield, losing after after Dallo loses the ball. Lisandro Martinez tries to go for ground instead of just running backwards. So it's a bad decision by him. And there, Brennan Johnson just has a free run. He's able to draw Delict onto him. Delict does a decent job to kind of get something to stop Brennan Johnson's cross, but it doesn't do enough to stop it from finding Kulishevsky. And Kulishevsky has a nice little clip finish with the touch to find the net. And there, it was just a matter of how much after it went to 2-0. There were a couple moments when maybe Man United were unlucky not to. It was maybe a handball shout on Romero when I think it was 2-0. But Man United created very few chances. Down a man, it's what you expect. And the opposite happened with Spurs. They created chances for fun. I think they found Tino Werner on two other occasions when he was 1v1 with the keeper and wasn't able to apply the finish. A couple of times when Golashevsky was in and Onana had to make a save. It was bad. It was not 24 shots, 10 on target, 4.9 is a very high xG. I think they said it's the highest that any away side has had in the league since I think they said Norwich versus Man City. Uh, and Man United, I think, does that say point 0.2 xG? Well, they had 11 shots and 2 on target. But five of the 9 big chances for Spurs came in the first half. Uh, and or no, I've got nine big chances for Spurs. I don't know how many came in the first half, but 12 shots in the first half. It's not this not did not happen because of the Bruno red card. So I do think it's a testament to Spurs, not necessarily Man United. I'll get to Man United, but I'll talk about Spurs first. Uh, the Arsenal game feels like a lifetime ago, especially for Brennan Johnson with a one of form that he's on all competitions included. One thing to talk about with the Carabao performance is Spurs were down 10 men early on in that game, and they did not change their approach. Now they're playing without Christian Romero, but they still had Van de Ven, and they're asking Van de Ven to be the last man back to stop any of these counters. They're still playing with every man, at basically at the 50-yard line, playing that high back line. They're playing down a man, and Spurs. I mean, I don't really know anything about Carabao, but they dominated that game and they won it 3-0. Despite playing down a man for at least at least 80 of those minutes, because the red card did happen early in the game. That was impressive. Brennan Johnson was one of those that got onto the score sheet there. I think Solanke did as well. They featured Archie Gray, that young 18-year-old they brought in the summertime. He had a very nice display, and then again, just Van de Ven is a cheat code. The way he's able to eat so much grass, and it allows them to play the high line that Ange wants, and it's not just that. It looks like he's shrieked a little bit of what his favorite midfield is. I thought, maybe he was just doing it versus Everton every couple of these games, but he's done it like every single game week now, where he's playing Madison and Kulishevsky together in midfield, not really as and does feel like Madison knows his role is to play deeper, to maybe be alongside someone is next to him, whether it's Basuma or Sar or Betancourt. It seems like maybe his preferred three right now is Betancourt, and then Kulishevsky and Madison. Uh, Son did have a bit of an injury versus the Carabao game, and he was concerned. We saw what happened with Timo Werner, where he was able to play in Son's stead. He's able to create some chances, but really flopped on the finishing. And then Mickey Moore came on a little bit on the bench, but he's only 17, so you don't know how much they can rely on him. That's something I mentioned with Arsenal, where they does feel that they're a little light as far as kind of just 1v1 attackers. Uh, Odegaard apparently has picked up an injury as well. Uh, but yeah, quite a good way for Spurs to respond. And then with Man United, uh, I guess I'll finish a little bit with them. Maybe I'll finish with Chelsea and then end it. Some of this is not really fixable. Some of it maybe is, but a lot of it is not. So for starters, uh, any team that can create overloads against them will do this because it's Spurs or Liverpool now. I'm talking Bournemouth and Brentford types. Any club that has people that can run will give United hell because this team does not run. Every single game week is the same thing. And in Eric Ten Hag in or out, the team gets outrun every single match, and the statistics back that as far as distance covered. And I am wondering if, given the way that the compensation of the team, the wage structures are set, when you're getting paid $300,000 or whatever it is, like for I guess it would be pounds per week, like some of those people are. Uh, maybe you don't want to necessarily work your socks off. Maybe you enjoy a little bit of that lifestyle. I don't know. Maybe things are a little bit too comfortable or not. But just it's very weird. They've recruited players that don't really run either. It's got like the slowest back line in the league, and they brought in players that have been given them. They brought in profiles of players that have been giving them problems over the last few years. Uh, Maguire's an issue, so you bring in Mateus de Ligt, who's kind of like a Dutch Maguire. Maybe it's a little harsh, but it kind of feels like that's kind of where we're at. Ugarte has a lot of similarities to Casemiro. A lot of positive similarities. Ugarte is very good at winning the ball back, but he's not really the best with the ball at his feet, and that was the issue with Casemiro before his legs went away. Ugarte is maybe someone you can have some faith in. You've spent a lot of money to bring him in, but you're not really surrounding him with the players that you really need. Now, they were trying it with Ericsson. It didn't really work for Swente on the goal they conceded, but they also controlled that game. There were there was the sky that is falling out on Manchester Twitter after the Twente game, but they at least had some control in that game. That's one thing I don't think I can really say with most Man United games is control. And then you brought in Mason Mount, who to me just feels like that's a Bruno replacement, like for like. You can't really play both at the same time, and they haven't been able to play both at the same time. So that's one kind of issue there. The lack of work rate with the attackers, I think it hurts them in every big game they played in. 4 years running now. Rashford doesn't work defensively. Neither does Garnacho, which is kind of starting to be a problem as well. They're leaving the fullbacks in 2v1 situations every single game week. Uh, Eric Ten Hag has made a mistake to play Diego Dallo at left back. He was the player of the season last year at right back. Now, no Luke Shaw kind of forces your hand, but you maybe knew that Luke Shaw was not really available week in and week out. He wasn't available last season as well. Why did they not target Ricardo Calafiore? Whether or not you could have gotten him or not, why did you not go? Why did you not try to find a left back this past season if you knew that Tyrell Malacia isn't available anymore? If you knew Luke Shaw wouldn't be available for, why was the idea to bring in Mazurai, who you decided to play on the right? Why did you try to move Dallo to left back? That has been a big surprise, and that a lot of the problems really has come from that. Now, usually you can go with their midfield, but they've been conceding week in and week out on that left back side, and it's not Liverpool were able to target on that side. Now, they have Salah and whatnot, uh, able to go at him and Martinez for a couple of those goals. Now, that was the game when everyone blamed it on Casemiro, but when Casemiro loses the ball, you can still stop a goal. They attacked down that side. A couple of those moments. Southampton attacked Diego Dallo with that Dibbling guy. He even caused a PK. So Diego Dallo to me is. I think when I was reading something with Crystal Palace, they were able to go at. I think it started was able to get Diallo to go to the ground. So it's just every single weekend. That is now a weakness for Man United, and you've taken who was player of the season for you last season. You've taken him a little bit out of position. Now, Dallo can maybe do a job there because you don't have anyone else, but I think it's hurting them, and maybe can't really do a job there. And he's not really never really been known for his defensiveness, his defensive awareness. And you've allowed Wan-Bissaka to leave to join West Ham, so you're kind of thin a little bit at the fullback spot. Uh, would Mazurai really be worse on the left to fit in Dallo on a spot that maybe he's more preferential for? I don't really know, and maybe I don't. Maybe the idea is to try to play Dallo to help Rashford out. I can't say, but it's not helping. And the fact that they spent money this year. They went out and got Xerxes, a false nine, but he's not a bagsman. And I think the issue that a lot of Man United fans were talking about last summer was they're not scoring enough goals. Rasmus wasn't converting the chances that they thought Man United were creating for him. And they went out and brought Xerxes, who's doing the same thing so far. He's getting into pretty good moments, but he's not converting the chances that is coming his way. Uh, and they spent 40 some million for Xerxes. And it's just like if you're not, and I don't really know how you fit Xerxes and Rasmus Højlund together with Bruno. Like it feels like Xerxes is kind of a false nine, kind of a number 10 kind of player that plays with a second striker or in a second striker spot that needs someone to play ahead of him. Maybe you can do that. When now you're not going to have Bruno for a couple of games instead of Mason Mount being played in that 10. Maybe you do Xerxes with Højlund being back and play Højlund up top. Uh, and Bruno's legs look cooked, and they haven't properly managed his minutes since Ten Hag has been there. But even before, that was an Ollie problem as well. So maybe the red card could actually be good for them. I don't know if they'll play him in Europa still, but they'll at least because it was a straight red, so they'll miss him for 3 games. But it's got to change, and some of it again is on Ten Hag, but a lot of it can be just on and a lot. It depends how much say Ten Hag has had when it comes to player development and recruitment. If not, if it's been a little bit more of the higher ups, then that is more of a thing. One thing you can say is the player that they've targeted since Ten Hag has gotten there has been very. There's a pattern there, and that's the problem. It's players that Ten Hag has personally known before. Matthias de Ligt was there with Ajax when he was there. They wanted Frankie De Jong. Now everyone wants Frankie De Jong, but I think they wanted him because of that Ajax connection. They went for Anthony because the Ajax connection. He brought in Tyree Malacia, the quote unquote left back that was supposed to be Luke Shaw's replacement because they knew him from the Dutch league. They brought in Mazurai also from Ajax, and De Ligt also Ajax. So it's you've kind of gotten into that situation, and if it's not that, the players that brought in have been people that are already known quantities. They brought in Cavante. Now this wasn't necessarily Ten Hag, but just the players there. Brought in not Canate, Cavalieri. Shoot. Oh no. Cavante, the guy with the hair. Anyways, and then after that, they brought in Ronaldo. And then what did they do? What did they do in other situations? It's they brought in Jadon Sancho, which probably made sense, but that didn't really work out. They decided to give up on Anthony Elanga. I feel like I'm repeating myself a little bit there, but it feels like they've never really. Oh, and the other things that they did was they looked at Real Madrid and they asked them for kind of players that they were tired of using in Rafinha, Varane, which they got a couple good seasons out of, and then Casemiro, which we are now seeing how that is working up. Casemiro was fit, and he's now not even being used anymore, and so there's just been issue compounded on another, and that is where they are. I mean, as far as what Ten Hag can do himself, the out of possession ease for any team to just play through them and to go with their back line that's always in retreat mode. Again, it feels like they're always reactive, and it stems from a weak back line. The weak back line is never able to be near the midfield. The gap is always too big, and that's been the same story for 3 years now. In possession, it feels like teams can press them with no fear factor, and because it feels like they're mistakes. Spurs were just pressing them, and they're just mistakes left and right. It was just really easy for Spurs to create some turnovers. Now they were doing the same for Brentford, so I mean Spurs are a really good pressing side, and the way the Spurs can press as high as they want is they have Mickey Van de Ven back there. That's always going to be able to help out with the danger. Uh, and they're able to to play their fullbacks a little bit differently. And Spurs are one of the better pressing sides in all of Europe, not just the EPL. And Man United were having a lot of issues trying to play through that pressure. the lack of buildup and or there was a lot of focus, coming into this game with their finishing. Apparently, they've created something like an XG of 10. They've only scored 5, so underperforming there. But I think the issues are a little bit elsewhere into the squad. So uh, the one thing to kind of end with is it's like 3 years now, and there's still really no identity into the squad. It's like pray the teams miss chances against you, or pray you convert the few chances you're able to get off the counter. One word again that I've never really used to talk about a Ten Hag game or Man United game in the last 4 years is control. It's always chaos. It's always an open game, very open. It's just if you can get by one player, the entire midfield, there's no one there within 30 yards. That happens every single game because the back line is always worried about what's going to be behind them because they don't have the pace to handle with those attackers. So the back line always has to have some room to work with there, and it always and because the front attackers, the front players are either pressing high when maybe they shouldn't, and it's just really easy to stretch that midfield out where there's just no one there. Um, they never have control, so it's open in chaos. And the few times they are able to play organized in a mid block, like we saw in the Community Shield game or FA Cup game, it's still not really controlled because it's still the other team that's able to just do whatever they want. It's just trying to make it harder for the other team to pummel you. But they never really are able to control a game, and I think a lot of that stems from the players that they've brought in, the players that they've targeted, the profiles that they've targeted. Uh, so, Ten Hag in or out, there was a lot of talk about, should you extend, should you not? The when it came out that the reason why they extended was because of the Man City win, FA Cup win, that to me it never made sense. You, you because you can get lucky, winning a game here and there. Like, what is going to be possible? What is going to be the more likely scenario in the future over a long term thing? Because they won that FA Cup game by bunkering down and withstanding 30 shots on the goal. I just don't feel like that's really repeatable success. And the reason why you want to extend a manager is you've seen something that shows you it's about to change. I didn't really see that in the FA Cup game. Uh, so, and by giving him an extension, you allowed him to be in charge, or whoever else was in charge of another transfer window where you spent a lot of money again, like $100 million, and you don't really see where the team has been improved. So that's kind of all we're going to go with there. Is there any room for optimism? I do think I want to see this with Lenny Euro. Lenny Euro is a player that will allow them to play more aggressively in the high line. That changes them significantly. I want to see Bruno maybe shoved aside and to see what Xerxes would look like there, or maybe to see what Mason Mount would look like in that 10 role instead. So maybe I want to see Rasmus and Xerxes tried together somehow, or maybe see Rashford try in that striker spot. It needs to be different because what's happened hasn't been good. I want to see Diego Dallo back at right back. I don't know what you want to do with Mazurai if he can play on the left or not. Maybe you can try to play Martinez, Lissandro Martinez, kind of an inverted left back like we've seen other people do. I don't think Martinez is your best center back. You can find a way to maybe do that, and that way you can maybe play Mateus Delict on the left. I know he's right-footed, but that shouldn't be that big of an issue to fit in Lenny Euro on the right. That way, you have some experience with the youth. You have some legs with the defensive awareness that Delict should have. Maybe that way you can maybe do it. Maybe even you could fit in Harry Maguire again with Lenny Euro. Lenny Euro will solve a lot of the problems. So lean on the youth is what I say. Kobe Mano produced you a lot of success last season. They apparently have another Mali, or not another Mali youngster. Another youngster, apparently a Mali youth product in Sakuru Kone. I think you should maybe start thinking of ways to implement him into the squad. You've got Europa games. Maybe you can try to find a way to get him going. I think they said he just turned 18, but apparently he had a pretty strong African Cup of Nations for Mali. The midfield needs legs. He offers it, and I've read some pretty high profiles that have been praising him. So It's got legs. Midfield needs to rethink. Really, Kobe Mano is struggling a little bit because it seems like he's been kind of played in ways that it doesn't really fit him, and Ugarte maybe needs some babying as well. It seems like he's going to take some time to get going. I think that but by conceding as early as they did, it just changed how maybe they were gonna go about the game, but early on, they made a decision to press really high and to try to play from the back for Spurs press from them, and that was just it was the wrong mistake to make, and I get because you're at home, you wanna be front-footed, um, it wasn't the idea to do. I think the Arsenal showed that you can really frustrate the Spurs side if you actually give them the ball and you make it really hard to play through them. Man United did the opposite. Man United made it as open and easy of a game for Spurs to find space if they wanted, and man, did they feast. So that is where we are for those games. I guess I'll end with Chelsea and Brighton. Jorginho, Rutter, and then Palmer, and then Balebo. So it was 2-1, and then Palmer decides to have fun. So PK, really nice ball by Sancho, or really nice little kind of a like turn from Sancho. Finds a return ball. He's able to draw the PK. Palmer converts that, and then Palmer gets a free kick. Unbelievable free kick, probably one of the goals of the weekend. And then Palmer in the 41st minute with a really nice kind of little run, disguised run, is able to get uh, behind Lewis Dunk and Abs and Webster. We'll get into that a little bit. And then so there you go, 4-2, and we didn't get much in the second half. A couple of couple guys returned for Chelsea. So Malo Gusto returned. That allowed Fofana to be a little bit more of a center back. Casado and Enzo in the midfield. Enzo actually played a pretty good game. To be honest, it still got a little bit destroyed by Carlos Baleba, but at least his vision was able to play people in. And then Noni Madueke, whose role was just try to get in behind that back line. Cole Palmer was given the idea of if you can't make runs yourself, try to be the one on the end of the ball, trying to look for those runs, and then Jackson. And it felt like uh, it was not a Chelsea side that I was expecting. I was expecting this to be a little bit more controlled than it was. Chelsea were trying to actually, play from the back and made mistakes. Sanchez made an error for basically the two Brighton goals. Uh, Chelsea were very direct, and they were very direct versus West Ham, and it's weird. Brighton tried. Brighton did not have Van Hecke. They did not have Joey Veltman, so they played Khalid Dagu. The Turkish player that they brought in last minute, who's supposed to be kind of a left back. They played him on the right, and he was getting destroyed by Jadon Sancho. Uh, and at the back line was Adam Webster and Lewis Dunk, and that is not what you would want if you're a Brighton fan, because the manager was Fabian Horza. Did not change what he did last week versus Nottingham Forest. Playing a high line at near the midway half of the field as well, because it's just really easy to get behind him, and that's what was happening. The other thing too was Webster and Dunk were so terrified of Nicholas Jackson running behind them. Chelsea was using Jackson to actually show for the ball, and that was sometimes uh, either bringing Webster or Dunk with him, or sometimes they were just actually staying further back. And so Jackson was always a free man to get on the ball. And one thing that was happening is because Webster and Dunk was staying like really far back, Kaladoglu or Estupian were not kind of noticing how deep that the back line really was when they were kind of playing a little higher up. And just the runs that it was so easy for Cole Palmer to get in behind. Cole Palmer scored even before before the 4 goals happened, and it was just offsides. But it was just really easy for Brighton to see those runs in behind, where Estupian and Dunk were not able to cover, and it was either Cole Palmer making it or it was Madueke that was making it, and this could have been a really big number, and it could have been really really ugly for Brighton. It's only 4. It was surprising it wasn't more than that. Brighton started Carlos Baleba, Matt Swifer returning, and then Henselwood. Henselwood, not really a midfielder that you would think, though he did score versus Nottingham Forest, but Henselwood has been played at either left back or right back in a couple of these games. I feel like that would have made more sense to play than Khalid Daglu, who was losing. He wasn't able to stick with Jadon Sancho. So Matt Swifer back. We haven't seen him since the opening game versus Everton. He didn't necessarily provide any kind of protection either. So not the best showing for Brighton to say the least. The Brighton were Brighton, but really it was the Cole Palmer show. 15 goals, 15 shots for Chelsea, 15 shots for Brighton, four big, seven big chances for Chelsea, and 4 point something xG. Touches in the penalty area, brought it even. 27 was 28. It's not the game you would have expected, especially with Chelsea having 4-2 lead going into halftime. It ends 4-2, and it ends with Chelsea only having 288 passes. I would have expected that number to be 600. So Brighton almost doubled them in passing. So it was the Cole Palmer show, but it was also the Nick Jacklin show. Nicholas Jackson, because of all the attention he was creating. And Jackson got the 2 goals last week, being able to just run in behind West Ham's line, and it was kind of the same kind of formula here. So again, it's possible that Maresca could have come in and said, keep control, guys. But he allowed them to actually play into the spaces. Cole Palmer even said after the game that the manager said, "Hey, anytime you have a chance to hit it first time, you know the high line's going to be there. Have the runners to get in behind it. Take your shot, take your risks." So I really did like hearing that. So because I've been one of those that thought Enzo was not going to be that kind of manager. More kind of pragmatism, as they say. It looks like he was game to take on some risk and a game to open games up. So really good to see, and definitely rewarded for it. And not only that, they've rewarded Cole Palmer to be a little bit more of a playmaker. We saw versus Man City, they tried to play him on the wing, and it took Marasco just one game to figure, why don't we just play him in a free role? And he's so good. I agree. Why not? Uh, he can he was showing for the ball deep and was having really nice through balls. He was playing some crossfield switches to find Jadon Sancho from deep. It feels like he can play anywhere in that midfield. I don't really know what his defensive contributes are, but when he's able to get on the ball, he is exciting. He can make some clever runs. He doesn't really feel like he's the most athletically gifted, but he can make timed runs into the box, and that's how he scores his 4th goal. There's a lot to like about his game now. And I've wanted to discount what he did last season because just thought it's one thing to just kind of be the star player in a Chelsea side that was just kind of struggling last season with Pochettino, but he really showed something in the Euros. Every time he came on for England, he made them better, and not just that, he scored that goal in the final to make it 1-1 for Spain. That's when you start to see him a little bit differently, and he's taken that to be he's taken that to heart, with his start to the season, so far, and, it's weird because you don't wanna make the comparison. Every player is different. It's hard not to see Kevin De Bruyne in his game, and it's just he came from the City Academy. City have to be kicking themselves here, because you just imagine, this with Holland. He sees, these runs in behind for Jackson, and Cole Palmer loves playing it. It's just Holland would have feast on this. It would have worked as well. And it's just funny because Chelsea kind of using the Nicholas Jackson in that kind of same way. That's the formula. It's not Jackson's Holland, but they're using him in the same way. They're using that kind of runs. They're using that directness and versus higher lines. It's a brilliant way to play. So again, it's not just pass for passing's sake. And then with Brighton had that issue with that I've talked about with Dan Burn, with Harry Maguire. It's just you can't really play the modern game. The modern game requires you to be able to work without the ball to try to press when teams are trying to play from the back. You play high, that where you press high with your attacking line. Then your midfielders have to follow your attacker lines, or there's too much gap there, and then there's too much gap if your defenders don't follow suit and to play high up. So they were trying to play high. They were trying to play Chelsea, straight up, and you're doing that with again, your Ferguson and Dunk at the halfway line is just asking for trouble. Dan Burn, Maguire, Webster, Dunk, Brighton have 2 of them. Michael Keane would be another on Everton. It's just hard to play that way, and I just feel like that kind of profile is just not ideal. Because and again, just Brighton, brought in so much money or spent so much money this past summer. It's very strange they didn't actually look at to target the back line. Now, they bring in Kaladagalu. They have tried to bring in some fullback help because that was an issue for them last season. They had no fullback depth. Uh, but they brought in Jorginho Rudder. I don't know if maybe Evan Ferguson has had a setback and they can't really play him. But they spent a lot of money for him. I'm very surprised they didn't look at trying to improve the back line a little bit, and they didn't. One injury to Van Hecke, and you've got to play Adam Webster, and Adam Webster cannot play with Lewis Dunk. That's or at least not the way that they were playing. So that is where we are for them. Everton and Crystal Palace 2-1 with Mark Gahey, and then Dwight McNeil turned into Leon Messi. Maybe a bit of a exaggeration, but very good goals by Dwight McNeil. Jared Braithwaite back for Everton, and it made a difference. Crystal Palace probably with the better performance in the first half, and then got a little sticky in the second half. 17 shots for Crystal Palace to Everton's 8. Only 2 on target, but only the 2 that really mattered. There was a moment in the first half where maybe Palace were a little upset because I think it looked like Mateta was in behind, and I think it's Tarkowski goes to ground, kind of catches him a little bit in the box. Could have been a PK, could have made it 2-1 because Crystal Palace did have that lead. Uh, Crystal Palace has been a team that have started the season kind of off a little bit. I don't think they're going to be in the relegation hunt, but it has been taking a while for them to get going. I am worried now because Liverpool play they play at Selhurst Park this coming weekend. Crystal Palace under Glasner actually were maybe one of the sides that disrupted Klopp's final season last year, where they won at Anfield 1-0. So I'll be a little concerned there, but one thing to say is the loss of Elise isn't insignificant. They've tried to bring in, they're trying to play in Kede, and Kede is more of kind of a striker, though he does, he's able to play uh, to create for them. Eze hasn't been able to get going nearly as much as probably he wants, and they've given away Odin Edward to someone else. So you only have Mateta, and Mateta just had a very long summer with the Olympics, so it's taken a while for Crystal Palace to get going. I still think they'll be fine. I really like the additions they did at the back line. Maxence Lacroix, there was one moment when, speaking of high lines and defenders, there was one moment when it looked like Ndiaye on a 50-50 sprint was going to get to the ball, and Lacroix actually, run that race. So it's like you had defenders out there that you could have brought in, and those teams didn't decide to do it for some reason. Fulham and Nottingham end with 1-0 with the Jimenez PK. Not a whole between either sides. Nottingham kind of went into this with a little bit of a weird kind of formation. Maybe he was giving Nuno was giving Lenga and Hudson Odoi a bit of a rest. Both came on in the second half, but it was a little too late. Awani and Wood was tried together as well, so we saw a bit of a different shape than we saw. No, Morgan Gibbs White, so that kind of showed a little bit there because of the red card for Brighton. Um, it did kind of affect their playmaking ability. Fulham win because of a PK. Forest maybe had a PK shot as well, but neither were really able to create much. 11 shots. Forest only 1 on target, and Fulham 14 shots, only for 2 on target. So uh, that just says both teams are very good, out of possession, very good defensively, and what a job again Marco Silva is doing there. He's brought in, he lost Tosin to Chelsea, and replaced him with Anderson from Crystal Palace, and he's fit in like a glove. And then the other thing that they've done is they've found a way to bring in that Adama and Jimenez connection, and they connect basically here for that for the PK that leads to it, and it comes against Nuno Espirito Santo, the former coach that they had. So it's really nice to see Jimenez back to form. Showed a little something of it last season, but it wasn't able to continue it. He looks good again, and he looks enjoying his football again. So really awesome to see. Awesome from Mexican side too. Sometimes he's been in and out of the squad. He's still not even 30 years old, and I think they said he's only a couple goals away from actually getting Chikorito Hernandez a goal tally for the EPL. So. Pretty awesome story. Nice little redemption story there. Really redemption story for both Adama and Jimenez. And then Brentford and West Ham. This ends 1-1. And Bremo again with the early goal. I think in the first 30 seconds into the game. Nice little volley by Embremo. So really nice finish. Shada's roll. Kevin Shada gets a start, and he has a nice little roll into the game or into the goal. And then Fabio also played a role with keeping a header to keep things alive. But Brentford weren't able to add on to that, and then Thomas Suchek in the 54th minute was able to equalize. Finally, West Ham were able to do a little combination play that they hadn't been able to do the entire game. Paqueta was able to find Jared Bowen. Jared Bowen one flicks it to to I believe Antonio, and then Antonio does well to keep it alive. He's trying to just shoot himself, but uh, you know, Thomas Suchek is able to get on the rebound. Nice little, it's kind of like a garbage goal, or cleaning out the trash kind of goal. But he's in the right position. Does well to get there. The build up before that was really nice. The only thing to talk about here was we did see a different change. I mean, with West Ham, you probably needed to see a result because on the back of the Chelsea game, on the back of the Liverpool game, they were destroyed. We did see a change. We did see Tadebo played instead of Mavropanos. No Ezra Alvarez, so we saw Rodriguez played by himself with Paqueta and Suchik. Sometimes Suchik hasn't been played or hasn't been starting. Sometimes it's been James Ward-Prowse, or not James Ward-Prowse. It's been someone else. And then Kudus was tried on the left. They weren't able to get him going, and he was actually subbed off at halftime. Kudus is having a little bit of a struggle to start the season. They're playing him on the left when his preferred role probably is on the right, but that is where Jared Bowen plays. So a little bit of a kind of issue to get started there. I think with West Ham, it's they get 19 shots, but only 13 or only 3 on target. It never really felt like they were threatening. It never really felt like Flecken had to make a lot of saves. They decided the fans just basically rode David Moyes out of the picture, and it was because the football wasn't entertaining enough despite it being successful. I mean, I've been kind of guilty a little bit of that as well. You would have imagined maybe they could do a little bit more, but they brought in Lopetegui, who's never really been known for playing necessarily that kind of attractive stuff either. It feels like it's very like for like. Now, I'm not going to say Lopetegui is going to be a bad manager for them. Lopetegui was able to keep Wolves up. Not necessarily. It doesn't matter if they're playing the best football. Lopetegui has managed a whole bunch of people. I think Real Madrid for a bit. But it's just you haven't really seen those ideas come out where it's been different. They've spent some money. They brought in Wan-Bissaka, and they brought in Somerville. Somerville hasn't really been able to take over for them. Todibo was pretty good for Brentford here. They brought in Carlos Soler, midfielder from PSG. Maybe he'll be able to show on as the season goes, but they haven't been able to get Bowen going and haven't been able to get Kyrgios going. It doesn't feel like every single season it feels like they want to get rid of Antonio and then they bring him back. I thought Antonio was quite good with Liverpool, but wasn't able to really get much going here, despite kind of having the action that helped create the goal. Uh, and as far as Brentford probably going to regret a little of this here. Brentford just can't get a break, really. No Norgard, no Jensen, as mentioned. Weiser looks like he's going to be out for a little bit. The guy they brought in to replace Ivan Toney, Igor Thiago, looks like he's going to be out until December. And now that it looks like they lost Kevin Schade in this game as well, and they're just injuries under injuries. Thomas Frank keeps trying to do some different things, but they can't really catch a break, and that is kind of where we are with them, and that's just where we end with. Bournemouth beat Southampton 3-1 thanks to a goal from Evan Nilsson. Quickly taken free kick, and then Watatara gets on the end of a second after a Lewis Cook shot, and then Semenyo, after a really nice hit, was able to find the corner. So 3-0 at halftime. Not a great start for Southampton, and then Harvard Bellis made a 3-1, and then Southampton, kind of had the ball a little bit in the second half, but weren't really able to create anything. Southampton have a bit of an issue defensively, like as I mentioned with their center backs. Harvard Bellis maybe not included, uh, but it was interesting to see, Adam Lallana looking so good with Ipswich, and then he only was able to come on in the second half. They said maybe it was a minutes thing, maybe his fitness. Lallana's always had issues with his fitness, but Lallana did look good last week, so maybe that can be something that Southampton fans can be happy about. They have nothing going forward, unfortunately for them. Now, Dibbling is maybe kind of the one player that you can look at that can give you some excitement, but they have nothing. Cam Archer can't really hit the ground going. They have the Stewart guy, who maybe they can kind of lean on a little bit. Adam Armstrong isn't really able to do much. The Bremerton Diaz also kind of looks a little out of place so far. So a lot of work for Russell Martin to do. Southampton can play the ball. They can do some passes together. But it does feel like it's maybe a little of a step too high than what it is. And I did kind of try to speed through it a little bit. But that's what happens when I have to get through 2 weeks. So anyways, appreciate you guys for tuning in. And until then, you said squatting and stop recording.